Hello, crime enthusiasts. Did you know that nearly 78% of people who watch these videos aren't subscribed? If you enjoy the content, I'd truly appreciate it if you hit that subscribe button. It really helps a lot. Also, don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your interaction not only supports the channel's growth, but also helps these dark stories reach more people. Thank you all for being here. By the way, where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments. I hit the record button, the little red LED winking at me in the dark. April 8th, 2021, 11:47 p.m. I say, voice low. I'm calling into episode 1 from my home on Willow Creek Drive, Benton, Ohio. It's been nearly 3 hours since I heard the first sound. I pause, swallow. I still can't believe I'm telling this. I lean back in the rickety wooden chair, its legs creaking under my weight. My basement office is narrow, bare concrete walls, a single exposed bulb hanging by frayed wiring. The air is damp, like the crawlspace beneath the house. I can taste the metallic tang of it on my tongue. I was editing yesterday's interview clips when I noticed the porch light flicker. I rubbed my forearms, goosebumps rising. It's April, so it's still cool. I could feel the chill creeping in. Behind me, my laptop's fan whirs. I lean close, flip the desk lamp on. 11:03 p.m. I read from the timestamp on my audio software. I paused, thought it was just a power surge, nothing more. I lean forward, pressing the mic closer. 2 minutes later, exactly at 11:05:17, I heard it. A deliberate knock, not on my front door, but on the basement hatch. The sound was dull, muffled, like someone tapping a thick wooden board. I press play on the recording and let a barely perceptible tap echo through the mic. That's it, I whisper. 3 solid raps. My hand trembles as I reach for my phone. Screen cracked, dead battery warning blinking. No help there. I lift my flashlight from the desk, a slim Cree model, its beam narrow and intense. I switch it on. The beam shakes as my fingers fumble over the switch. I rise, feet sinking into the frayed gray carpet. 11:05:45, I note, checking my watch. The thick vinyl strap is sticky against my skin. I pad toward the hatch in the center of the floor. It's painted the same dull gray as the floorboards. Easy to miss if you're not looking. I place a hand on the cold metal latch. It's unlocked. I exhale, cold air rushing up from the crawlspace below. The smell hits me. Damp earth, mold, something like rotten leaves. That smell, I say, voice hollow. It was like someone had dug a shallow grave and then left it open. I grip the flashlight tighter. The beam flickers, leaving the corners of the room in shadow. I lift the hatch an inch. At 11:06:03, I hear it. A low creak, as if someone had turned a heavy wheel beneath the trap door. My heart slams so hard I swear I can hear it over the fan. I yank the hatch open. Silence. The beam catches a metal ladder secured to the concrete wall. 5 rust-speckled rungs descend into darkness. I shine the light down. There, 10 feet below, lies a stack of cardboard boxes. Mine. Files, old tax returns, that box of my grandmother's letters, everything. But on top sits something I didn't own. A pair of leather gloves, the kind painters use, stiff and new. A single fingerprint smudged across the right glove's palm. The print is too faint to read, but it speaks volumes. My breath catches. I didn't realize it at the time, I whisper, but that glove was proof he'd been watching me since before I moved in. I crouch, heart hammering, and reach for the glove. The glove feels heavy as though soaked with something. Maybe moisture from the underground walls, maybe. At that moment, a new sound cuts through the silence. Footsteps overhead, slow, deliberate, pacing back and forth across the thin floorboards. The creak is measured, almost rhythmic. Tap, tap, pause, tap. My skin prickles. Every nerve sparks. I shine the flashlight upward, but the small window high on the wall shows only black sky and the silhouette of a leafless oak branch scratching against the glass. I scramble up, snapping the hatch shut behind me, heart slamming in my ears. The gloves clutched in one hand, the flashlight in the other. My desk lamp flickers. I consider calling the police, then remember, they took forever last time. I roll my eyes at the memory of Sargent. Harper's bored face, the way he flipped through my filed report like he'd rather be anywhere else. Yet I know I have to call. I shuffle to the landline by the front door, a heavy old rotary phone, paint chipped. The plastic cord tangles around my ankles. I lift the handset. It's silent. The dial tone hums. I punch in 911. 9. Pause. 1. Pause. 1. The operator answers at 11:07:52. "Emergency," she starts. "Listen," I blurt, voice shaking. "Someone's been in my basement. I have evidence, a glove, footprints." I trail off as she tells me an officer has been dispatched. I give her my address, 422 Willow Creek Drive. Then I hang up. The line clicks dead. I pace. My bare feet scrape the hardwood. I pause at the window. My neighbor's house sits 2 doors down, its curtains open. I see light, someone watching TV. I pound on the glass. No reaction. I pound again. Finally, a silhouette appears. Mrs. Caldwell, her nightgown hiked up, hair in a bun. I wave frantically. She stares, puzzled, then disappears. At 11:18 p.m., I hear sirens in the distance. Relief floods me, but it's fleeting. My chest tightens as I think, what if he's still here? I drop the glove on the console table. Mr. Harper will bag it as evidence, but I know it'll gather dust like everything else. I return to the basement hatch. My flashlight's beam skims over the wood again. I hesitate, then fling it open. Downstairs, the boxes are exactly where I left them, but the leather gloves are gone. In their place lies something new, a Polaroid photograph, face down. I flip it. The photo is glossy, edges freezer white in the flashlight's glare. On it, blurred but unmistakable, me, asleep in bed, 1:23 a.m., but it's only 11:20 p.m. I freeze. The floor beneath me groans. I spin around. Behind me, in the dark corner of the room, stands a shape, tall, motionless, watching. And then the lights go out. I hit stop on the recorder and let out a shaky breath. I glance at the little red light. It's off now, but the memory of it glowing haunts me. I lean forward and tap record again. April 8th, 2021, 11:21 p.m. I say, voice low. Episode 2. The lights have just gone out. I'm alone in the basement, and I'm pretty sure someone, or something, is down here with me. I can hear the scrape of concrete boots on cement, coming from the far corner. My flashlight lies on the floor, beam flickering like a dying eye. My fingers brush the cold metal of the hatch ladder. I force myself to remain calm. "Okay," I whisper to the mic. "Let's try this." I drop to my knees and scoot forward, guiding my hand along the rough cinder block wall until I find the ladder. The rungs are slick with moisture. My palms stick to the metal as I climb down. Each foothold echoes in the darkness. 8 rungs. 7, 6. My heart pounds so hard the vibrations buzz in my ears. I reach the bottom at 11:21:36 p.m. I twist my headlamp on. The narrow beam illuminates the boxes again, but not arranged neatly. They're strewn across the floor, as if tossed by an angry hand. My gloves, the ones I'd discovered, are nowhere to be seen. Instead, there's more. footprints in the thin layer of dust on the concrete. They're boot treads, old army style, 6-inch heels, pointing toward a crudely scrawled note taped to the side of a box. I pad over. The note is typed on plain white paper, edges torn, ragged. "Stop listening. This is not your story." I swallow and exhale slowly. My breath clouds in the cold air. It's about 55 degrees Fahrenheit down here. My basement doesn't get heated. I cup my hands to my mouth, warm them with breath. The silence seems to thicken, then I hear it. A drip, drip, drip. Water from a burst pipe above, or tears? The sound echoes staccato as though marking time. I follow the footprints. They lead to a pile of boxes near the far wall. One box is open. Inside, I see my own things. Childhood drawings. That bronze coin I found under the porch. The silver locket my mother gave me. On top of everything, a single sheet of paper, typed, "You have what I need. Give it back." My hands tremble so badly I can't pick it up. I lean my forehead against the cold concrete wall and close my eyes. I don't even know what it is, I mutter to the mic. I've never told him. I haven't told anyone. I force myself to stand. The beam of the headlamp catches something else, a smear of dark liquid on the floor near the note. It glistens, fresh. I kneel and drag my finger through it. It's sticky. Blood? I taste iron in my mouth and gag. I lean over to the box and pick up a crumpled old photograph I'd shoved there months ago. Me, age 8, at summer camp. It's torn in half. On the back, I'm watching. Suddenly, the beam of my lamp swings upward. At the top of the ladder, in the hatch opening, there's a shape. A hand, long fingers wrapped around the wood. I stare, frozen, as the hand tightens its grip. My pulse races. I raise my voice louder. "Stop! Stay back!" But my voice bounces off the walls and returns hollow. The hand withdraws. A click. A soft release of the hatch latch. I dash forward and fling myself at the ladder, digging my fingers into the rungs as I climb. I reach the top and yank the hatch closed behind me. I collapse on the floor above, panting. My headlamp's beam slices through the darkness, catching motes of dust drifting in the stale air. I sit up, crawl to the nearest wall, and fumble for the wall switch. Nothing. The basement's wiring is ancient. The breakers are in the kitchen. It means I'll have to go back down, or else root through the utility closet in the hallway. Horror claws at me, but I need light. I inch toward the utility closet. My bare feet scrape the hardwood. I slide the door open. It swings on rusty hinges with a groan. Inside, shelves of paint cans, cleaning supplies, and the old breaker panel. I reach for a flashlight perched on the top shelf. My fingers brush wet spots on the can of sealant. More of that dark liquid. I yank the flashlight free. It flickers to life. I turn back to the stairwell leading down. The beam catches the bottom step. There. Footprints again. These smaller, athletic soles pointing up to me. I stare, trapped between the closet and the basement door. I grip the flashlight like a lifeline and descend. Each step creaks. At 11:24 p.m., I reach the bottom. The beam illuminates the box with my childhood drawings. I notice something new, a single crayon, deep red, not mine. I pick it up. It's sticky, like it's been dipped in something. I wipe it on my jeans. The tip snaps. The crayon is short, blunt. I lift my head. Footsteps directly behind me. I whirl and sweep the light across the room. Nothing. But the beam catches motion. The metal ladder glints. The bottom rung is bent, as if someone tried to remove it. My chest tightens. I back toward the wall, breathing ragged. I try to think. Evidence. If I can preserve the scene, The police will have to take me seriously this time. I set the flashlight on the floor, yank a plastic evidence bag from my pocket, leftover from my last episode's prop stash. I slip the red crayon inside. Then I turn to the note taped to the box and bag that too, the typed messages, and the photograph. My hands shake as I seal the bags. A sound, a slow drag, coming from the far end of the basement. My eyes dart there, and I see it. The box is shifting, as if being pushed aside. A tall shadow emerges, its head just below the floor-level hatch. It stands still for a moment, then raises an arm and holds something. A recorder, identical to mine, glowing red. My throat closes. I whisper to the mic, He's recording me." The figure lowers the recorder and presses stop. The red light winks off. I shine my flashlight up at the hatch. No one there. The stairs are empty. I turn back. My own recorder lies on the floor, still blinking. The red LED pulses, indicating full disk. I pick it up, stare at it. I know I pressed stop, but it's still recording. I shake it. It lights up brighter. Then, above me, the basement hatch squeaks open. The light from the hallway spills in. I glimpse a shape, slender profile, hood pulled low. I swing the flashlight. It catches a flash of steel. A crowbar resting on the threshold. My flashlight battery dies with a final sputter. Darkness. I sit here now, under the hallway light, the crumpled recorder in my lap. I can still hear the echo of that hatch squeal, my own heartbeat pounding. I haven't moved since I scrambled up. The police are on their way. I called again from my cell at 11:29 p.m., breathless, nearly incoherent. When they arrive, I'll show them the evidence bags, the crayon, the note, the photograph, and I'll have to explain the recorder that turned itself back on. But I can't shake the feeling that none of this is enough. Because if he can manipulate my recording devices, what else can he manipulate? My mind? My reality? I tuck the recorder in my jacket pocket. I kneel and press record on my phone's voice memo app. April 8th, 2021, 11:31 p.m., I say. I don't think this is over. I think he's going to climb back down. And next time, he'll want something more than my stories. He'll want me. I press record again, my hand still shaking from the last flash of darkness. April 9th, 2021, 1:02 a.m., I whisper. Episode 3. It's been nearly 2 hours since the lights went out, and I've been too frightened to move from the hallway. But I know I can't stay here forever. I clear my throat. The recorder's little red light glows in the dim corridor. When the officers finally arrived, around midnight, they found me huddled by the basement hatch, rocking back and forth. I handed them the evidence bags, the red crayon, the torn photograph, the typed notes. Sergeant Harper looked at me like I was lying. He bagged the items, but I could see in his eyes that he thought it was a prank, some elaborate hoax for clicks. I pause, swallow. He refused to go back down into the basement. Said it was out of his jurisdiction, that I needed a higher-up to call the SWAT team if I really believed someone was down there. He left me with a flashlight and told me to secure the house. I laugh hollowly, as if I hadn't been trying all night. I lean into the mic again. At 12:34 a.m., I called the local news reporter I'd interviewed a few weeks back, Clara Donovan, at Channel 7. I begged her to come over, to put some pressure on the department. She said she'd be there in 20 minutes. I stand and pace the hallway. My bare feet trace the vinyl planks. Cold, sticky with last night's spilled coffee. I can taste it on my tongue. Burnt grounds, stale sugar. I wipe my mouth on my sleeve. 1:05 a.m., I say, checking my phone's clock. Still no Clara. I decided I couldn't wait. I grab the cordless phone from the foyer table. Dead, battery at 0. I slam it down. I whisper to the recorder, I need to check something. I need definitive proof. I stride toward the living room. The overhead fixture is lit. Somehow the circuit tripped back on. The familiar hum of the lamp bulb makes me jump. I flip the overhead light off, then on to test. It flickers. At 1:07 a.m., the lights finally stay on. I take a deep breath and step into the living room. Papers are scattered where I'd left them. Interview transcripts, computer receipts, the bill for my rental deposit. On the coffee table lies another Polaroid, this one face up. I crouch and pick it up. The image is grainy, blown out by the flash. Me, sitting here in this very chair, at 12:57 a.m., but it's only 1:07 a.m. now. I shiver. The timestamp is scrawled in black marker on the white border, 12:57. In the photo, my eyes are closed, head tilted back, as if I'd passed out. I lean close to the photo. On the back, a single word is written, huge and jagged, remember. My chest goes cold. I stand, clutching the photo like a shield. I whisper, what am I supposed to remember? A sudden noise. The front door clicks. I spin. In the doorway stands Clara Donovan, her camera crew's lights flickering off the street behind her. She's wearing a down jacket, breath steaming. I rush forward. She raises a hand. Hold on, she says, voice calm but urgent. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. I guide her into the living room, shutting the door behind her. I flick the lights back off. My portrait of wires and bulbs grows dim. I set the recorder on the coffee table and hold up the Polaroid. Clara bends close, shining her flashlight across the image. You said you didn't pass out, she murmurs. You didn't remember being here? I shake my head. I black out whenever he gets close. I don't know why. My voice cracks. I'm not drinking, I swear. I haven't taken any pills. She stands, scanning the room with her light. Any signs of break-in here? Forced entry? I run my hand over the doorframe. No splintering, no pry marks. None. She nods slowly. What about upstairs? My stomach twists. I haven't checked. I don't want to. She places a hand on my arm. It might be nothing, but if there's proof... She trails off. I grip her hand and nod. We head for the stairs together. Each step creaks, protesting our weight. The carpet on the staircase is threadbare, musty. I can smell old smoke, as though someone once smoked here decades ago. At the top, the hallway is lined with closed doors. My bedroom door stands slightly ajar. I push it open. The room is dark, but my phone's glow from the living room casts weak light. The bed is rumpled, blankets half on the floor. I step inside. The air smells like antiseptic. My landlord's attempt at a fresh paint smell, but beneath it something else. Lavender shampoo or soil? I wrinkle my nose. I shine my phone light across the dresser. My jewelry box lies open, drawers empty. The locket my mother gave me, the one with her photo inside, it's gone. In its place, a single leather glove, DRYCLEANONLY label still attached. I crouch and pick it up. On the glove's palm is another fingerprint. I hold it to the light, a smudge, almost eroded. A low click behind me. I whirl around, phone beam sweeping. The doorway to the adjoining bathroom yawns open. I step back, heart slamming. Clara stands in the frame, holding up her phone camera. They'll want this footage, she whispers. Don't move. I stand frozen. She lowers the phone. Look, she says, voice urgent. I snapped a photo of the glove and the dresser. We need to show the department. I nod numbly. She takes out a USB stick. Slide these images onto this. I'll upload them instantly when I get to my car. I let her. My fingers shake as I press the glove into her hand. She steps back. I'm going to get the USB. Don't move. She disappears into the hallway. I hear her footsteps fade. I'm alone again. I raise my phone to check the time. 1:12 a.m. My battery is at 4%. I whisper to the darkness. He's here. I know it. My phone flickers and dies. Silence. And then a faint tapping, metal on tile, from the bathroom. Tap, tap, tap. I press record on the recorder still on the dresser. April 9th, 2021, 1:14 a.m. I murmur. I think he's behind that door. I step toward the bathroom, hand sliding along the wall. The temperature drops. My breath plumes. Tap, tap, tap. I reach the door. My hand reaches for the knob, a polished chrome cylinder. I pause, thumb trembling over the latch. Tap, pause, tap. My knuckles brush cold porcelain tile. A whiff of bleach and something rotten. I twist the knob. The door swings inward with a groan. Inside, the bathroom is small. White fixtures, vinyl floor tiles. On the vanity mirror, written in fog, I see you. I step closer, and another word appears under it, as if my breath is writing it, soon. My heart leaps. I stumble back. The door slams shut behind me. I scream. The door handle jiggles. I yank the door open, empty hallway. I flee down the stairs 2 at a time. I crash into the living room and grab the recorder. Its red light is steady, recording. I lean forward. He's targeting my mind. I gasp. He's controlling the environment, my house, and the front door crashes open. Clara stands there, flashlight beam dancing across her face. I got the USB, she pants. But something's wrong. My car alarm's going off, and there's a note. I take the USB from her. It's heavy, smeared with something dark. I pull it out. The metal tip is bent. I look at her. She nods. He's here too. We hear the front door lock click shut, without anyone touching it. I press record one last time. April 9th, 2021, 1:19 a.m., I say, voice low but fierce. You're hearing this because I had to leave, and because I want you to know I'm not safe. If you're listening, stay alert and remember, sometimes the scariest thing isn't what's in the dark. It's what you see when you think you're alone. I press record on my phone's voice memo app. The faint click echoes down the darkened hallway. April 9th, 2021, 3:47 a.m., I begin, voice barely above a whisper. Episode 4. I haven't slept. It's been over 2 hours since Clara and I fled the house. We're holed up in my car in the supermarket parking lot 2 blocks away. The engine's still running. She says the noise makes us feel safer. I keep checking my rearview mirror. I think he's watching. I pause, drawing in a ragged breath. The overhead lamps in the lot hum softly, casting yellow pools of light on cracked asphalt. I can smell the gasoline fumes mingling with Clara's coffee. She's been drinking to stay awake. I lean forward and tap the mic. 3:48 a.m. We loaded the evidence onto the USB stick before leaving. The files are on my laptop, hidden under the passenger seat. I'm going to play one clip now, just a few seconds. I swipe my thumb across the screen, open the folder, and hit play. A distorted, breathy voice emerges, my own, from the basement recording at 11:06 p.m. But beneath me is another voice, low and threatening, whispering a single word. Remember. The word echoes 3 times, each softer than the last, then static. I stop the playback. My heart hammers so loud I nearly drop the phone. Why does he keep saying that? I whisper. Clara reaches over, places a hand on my knee. Her fingers are cold. Because, she says quietly, he wants you to realize something. I swallow. My throat is dry. I force the words out. I think he's using your recording as like a trigger. He can make the devices replay his voice at will. Clara's eyes flash. We need to get somewhere safe. We need professionals. I nod, staring past her to the fog-shrouded lot. A nearly empty shopping cart sits 10 feet away, its wheels rustling in the breeze. The breeze carries the scent of dawn. Wet pavement, spoiled fruit from the dumpster. I rub at my eyes. Okay, I say, we go to the station. We turn ourselves in if we have to, but they'll only listen if we have irrefutable proof. She clicks her seatbelt fastener. Let's go. We pull away from the curb. My headlights carve twin beams through the mist. I turn onto Main Street. The streetlights blur past. I glance at the USB stick on the passenger seat, its metal casing smudged. I pick it up. It feels heavier than before, as if loaded with more than data. At 3:59 a.m., we pull up outside the Benton Police Department. The building's brick facade is dark, save for a single light above the entrance. A no trespassing sign is stenciled on the door. I shut off the engine. The air inside the car turns cold and still. I reach for the recorder app, still running. April 9th, 2021, 3:59 a.m., I say softly. We're here, but I have to admit, I'm terrified. What if he followed us? What if he's inside right now? Clara opens her door and slips out. She's wrapped in my coat. Her breath puffs out in white clouds. Before she disappears down the concrete steps, she turns. Stay here, she whispers. I'm going to call a sergeant I know. Stay alert. I nod, but my fingers are numb. I hunch forward, resting my elbows on my knees. The recorder sits on the seat beside me, its red light pulsing. I stare at it. Every pulse matches my heartbeat. 4:02 a.m. I close my eyes. I can hear the distant rumble of traffic on the bypass. A faint clicking, like heels on tile, drifts up from the basement of the station. My chest tightens. I open my eyes. The passenger door opens behind me without warning. I jump and whip my head around. Clara stands there, eyes wide, flashlight in hand. Her face is pale. Come here, she says, voice shaking. Quick! We slip inside, keeping low. The lobby is empty, the fluorescent lights off. Emergency bulbs cast a cold glow. Clara leads me to the glass front desk. She taps on the security intercom. Nothing. She bangs her fist on the desk. Police, she shouts. We need help in here. Silence. Then, from the back corridor, we hear a low hum, like a tape deck spinning at high speed. The sound grows louder, morphing into a whisper. Remember! Remember! My skin prickles. I press myself against the glass, heart racing. Clara grips my arm. It's coming from upstairs, she rasps. We look at each other, breathless. Finally, she nods. We slip through the swinging door into the corridor. The walls are lined with bulletin boards, wanted posters, faded flyers. The hum echoes from the stairwell at the far end. I can taste the dusty air, linen, disinfectant, something acrid. We follow the sound. Tap, tap, pause, tap. It leads us up the stairs. Each step groans under our weight. The hum grows louder, turning into a rhythmic chant. Rem, M, Burr. At the top, the hallway extends to the left and right. The chant drifts from room 207, a small evidence storage room. Clara glances down at me. This is where they logged your first break-in, she whispers. I swallow. The door to room 207 is ajar. We push it open slowly. Inside, the room is lit by a single bulb overhead. Rows of steel shelves hold boxes and envelopes labeled with dates and case numbers. On the far shelf sits a cardboard box labeled April 8, 2021, Willow Creek Drive, Evidence. I approach it, hand trembling. As I near, the chanting stops. The silence is a weight. I rest my hand on the box. The brown corrugated surface is cold. I lift the lid. Inside, the red crayon in its evidence bag, the torn photograph, 2 typed notes, and my recorder, the one I thought I'd left in the car. My breath catches. Clara steps beside me and shines her flashlight in. "How?" she starts. I shake my head. My eyes fix on the recorder's red light, glowing steadily. On its screen, a new message flashes. "Playback ready." I bend, reach for the bag. My hand grazes the crayon. It slips from its plastic sleeve and clatters to the metal floor. The sound echoes unnaturally long. I look up. Across the room, the stairwell door creaks, opening by itself. A cold draft gusts through the doorway, rattling boxes. The air smells like damp soil and old paper. Clara grabs my arm. "We need out, now." I nod, but as I rise, I notice something taped to the inside of the lid. A Polaroid photo, face down. I flip it over. My breath freezes. It's me, standing outside the station at 3:58 a.m. looking terrified, flashlight beam on my chest. But the date scrawled on the border is tomorrow's, April 10th, 2021. I drop the photo. It flutters to the floor. My legs feel weak. Clara grabs my hand. "Go," she whispers urgently. I turn, but the stairwell door slams shut. The chanting resumes, soft, insistent. "Remember, remember." Clara yanks on my arm. We sprint to the door, but the corridor stretches longer than it did a moment ago. The walls seem to recede. The hum grows into a roar. Red emergency lights flicker to life. We reach a locked exit door. Clara frantically pulls at the handle. "Open!" she shrieks. Behind us, the chanting turns into laughter, low, mirthless. I press my face to the glass panel. Beyond is the empty lobby, the street lights winking outside. I pound the door. The laughter swells. And then, the red crayon from the evidence box appears on the floor by my feet, freshly broken in half, tip pointed. I pick it up with shaking fingers and press it to the glass, drawing a line across the fogged surface. The line traces a date, April 10th, 2021. The laughter stops. Silence. Then the exit door handle jiggles. Clara and I exchange a look. Her eyes fill with tears. I shove the crayon into her hand. "Remember," I whisper. She nods. The handle turns. I tap the little record light back on. April 10th, 2021, 4:37 a.m. I whisper, voice rough. Episode 5. We made it out of the station, somehow. Clara and I piled into my car and drove until we saw the sunrise breaking over the cornfields east of Benton. Now we're at her cousin's farm, 30 miles from town. It's quiet here, but I can't shake the sense that we brought something with us. My breath clouds in the cold interior of the pickup. The dashboard clock reads 4:40 a.m. I rub my arms. The vinyl seats stick to my skin. Outside, the sky is slate gray, and the scent of damp earth drifts in through the cracked window. Clara is asleep in the passenger seat, huddled under my wool blanket. She twitches, murmuring something I can't make out. I don't wake her. I lean forward, thumb hovering over the screen. 4:42 a.m., I say, breaking the silence. Before we get into what happened at the station, I need to back up. After episode 4 ended, and we saw that photo stamped April 10th, 2021, I called Sergeant. Harper again, from my cell at 1:22 a.m., I begged him to have forensics process the evidence. He finally agreed to send a crime scene tech out. His name is Deputy Ramirez. Badge number 057293. I pause to check my notes, the spiral-bound notebook open between my knees. The pages are damp with sweat. I arrived back at the station at 1:35 a.m. The lights were still flickering. Ramirez met me in the lobby, dark circles under his eyes, breath smelling faintly of coffee and stale tobacco. He wore a fluorescent vest over his uniform. I handed him the evidence bags one by one. Bag 001 with the red crayon. Bag 002, the ripped photo. Bag 003, the two typed notes. Bag 004, the leather glove from upstairs. I tapped the recorder for emphasis. Ramirez logged each item into evidence under case number 21-0420-CR. He scanned the barcodes 210420CR001 through 210420CR004. He told me the chain of custody would start at 1:38 a.m. Every touch, every transfer would be recorded. He tucked the bags into a sealed metal locker behind the front desk, the kind with combination-secured doors. I exhale, voice low. I watched him lock it up, the click echoing in the empty hallway. Then, I swallow hard. At 2:05 a.m., I got a text from Clara. We need to leave now. She'd been stuck at the front door, and she said she saw a shadow moving behind the frosted glass. I went to meet her, and the locker door was open. My evidence was gone. Ramirez's locker, unlocked, with no sign of forced entry. My fingers tremble as I rewind the audio. 2:06 a.m., I add, I told Ramirez. He was stunned. He said, "That's impossible. That door needs a passcode and prints to open." He punched in his code, nothing. The door was ajar. No prints, no sign of pick, just empty shelves. I glance at Clara, still sleeping, and lower my voice. We grabbed what remained of our devices, my phone recorder and her camera phone, and fled again. That's when the sirens started uptown. Maybe the SWAT was finally mobilizing. We didn't stop until we reached her cousin's farm. That was 3:15 a.m. We barricaded the door with an iron rake and a wooden plank. I sat on the floor, breathing hard, coffee-scented sweat on my forehead. I pause the recorder, cough, then restart. 4:50 a.m. We rang Clara's cousin's doorbell. He's a farmer, name's Joel Franklin. Late 40s, leathery skin, wears suspenders. He answered half asleep, smelling of straw and manure. We told him everything. He let us in without question. Said he knew the station had gone dark because he listens to the scanner while he repairs tractors. I smile, but it's brittle. He brought us hot chocolate, powdered Swiss Miss with too much sugar. I could taste sweetness, but it left a hollow in my chest. Now, I say, we're holed up in his spare bedroom. The walls are painted barn red, the air thick with dust motes drifting in the single window's beam. I've been reviewing the recordings on my laptop. There's a clip from 1:06 a.m. that I hadn't noticed, just before we fled the basement hatch. It's faint, but there's a third voice beneath mine and his, low, metallic, almost digital. It whispers two words. Find me. I've boosted the gain. Every time I play that clip, the room temperature drops. My pulse thuds. I glance at the recorder. 4:55 a.m., I murmur. I decided to check the glove for DNA. I called the county lab, Analytical Forensic Services, north wing of the Benton County Courthouse. The tech there, Anita Choi, said they could have preliminary results by noon today if I drop it off. But I don't trust noon. I don't trust daylight. I leaned back, letting the weight of it all settle. And there's more. In the morning mail, I found a white envelope slipped under the door. No return address, nothing written outside. Inside, one photograph, a Polaroid, face down. I flipped it. It shows the spare bedroom we're in now, this very bed, taken at 4:30 a.m. But the timestamp is wrong, 0/4/10/21. And in the corner of the photograph, I can't explain this. I see myself asleep, eyes open, staring at the camera. I swallow. So I have to ask, is this someone, something, able to manipulate time? Or is it just me losing my mind under the pressure? I know what I felt last night. Cold, hunger pangs, that metallic scent. But I haven't slept. My senses are fraying. I tap the mic again. 4:58 a.m. I'm going to do something crazy. I'm going back to town, to the courthouse, to the laboratory, to confront Harper, Ramirez, Choi, to demand answers. Clara doesn't want to, but she'll come. Because at this point we have no choice but to face whatever this is. We need facts, or we'll never stop running. I pause. The recorder catches the faint creak of the bedroom door, though I know it's nailed shut with a board. I lean into the mic, voice barely audible. I'm sorry, I don't know if I'll make it back, but I have to try, for the truth and for us. The recorder's red LED pulses in the dim room. I lean forward and tap stop. April 10th, 2021, 7:16 a.m. I whisper into the recorder, voice rough as gravel. I press the little red light to confirm it's recording. Episode 6, the final entry. If you're hearing this, I made it back, or at least this tape did. Clara's driving us toward the courthouse now. I can't see through the windshield. Her hands are shaking on the wheel, headlights cutting through the dawn fog. I'm sitting in the back seat, recorder in one hand, evidence bag in the other. I pause, swallow hard. The car's heater is on full blast, but I feel ice in my veins. 7:18 a.m., I continue. We left the farm at 6:10. No sign we were followed. I kept checking the rear view and side mirrors. Nothing but empty country roads. I tapped the recorder. The glove is bagged. DNA swab collected yesterday at 5 p.m. by Anita Choi's tech. She confirmed a partial male profile matching. No record in CODIS yet. I close my eyes. That profile, it's not in the system. And the print on the glove? Also unknown. I lean forward. 7:21 a.m. We just passed the Benton County Courthouse. I can see the clock tower, 7:22. We'll be late for Anita's noon cutoff, but she promised to stay past closing. We need that report. Without it, Sergeant Harper will dismiss us again. I clear my throat. I want to review what we know, because by the time this episode ends, I may not know anything at all. My breath hitches. He's been inside my house. He's taken and returned evidence. He's manipulated devices to record his voice, voices that trigger memory blanks. I swallow. He's able to appear in photographs dated in the future. He's uncertain where time ends and he begins. I press record again. 7:25 a.m. Clara's cousin Joel called the police scanner this morning. He heard something on the dispatcher channel. An anonymous tip about explosive materials in the evidence locker. They sealed the county lab wing, evacuated the building. Clara tried to call me at 7:02 a.m. No answer. That's when she saw the envelope under her windshield wiper. She picked it up. Inside was another Polaroid, face up. My voice drops. It showed us, in the car, at this very moment, 7:24 a.m., Clara's hands gripping the wheel, my face pale. But the timestamp read 4/10/21/706. I lean back. The lab exploded at 7:08 a.m. minor blast, set off by a small incendiary device inside a filing cabinet. No fatalities, but extensive damage to the north wing. All forensic work destroyed. Anita probably lost her entire day's testing. The sheriff's emergency call went out at 7:09. The courthouse is on lockdown, roads blocked. I stare at the bag with the glove as the car rolls to a stop behind a police barrier. Blue lights dance in the fog. We get out. I step onto wet pavement and the glue of old coffee grounds under my shoes leaves a sticky crunch. We stand before a cordon of deputies. rifles slung, faces unreadable behind visors. I press record. 7:32 a.m. We approached Captain Monroe, tall, gray hair, tie askew, badge number 064 BCP. His voice is clipped. He asked to see the evidence. I handed him bag 004, the glove. He opened the UV room in the mobile command post, a van with forensic services stenciled on the door. Inside, the air smelled like chemical reagents and ozone. I flash back. Monroe put on gloves. He unzipped the bag. The glove was gone. My voice falters. In its place, a single matchbook, black cover, no logo, that I've never seen before. He looked at me. "Is this yours?" I shook my head. He said, "Nothing else?" I said, "Nothing." He sealed the bag with a new tag. 21-00420-C-R-G-LV-void. He marked item not recovered. Then he asked about the Polaroid. I clear my throat. I told him it was in my recorder case. He told Clara to hand over something. I shift on my feet. 7:35 a.m. Clara handed him the Polaroid taken of us at 7:24. He scrutinized it under the van's halogen lamp. He asked, "Timestamp accurate?" I said yes. He frowned. Then he said, "I'll need the camera," and Clara's phone. She hesitated, but handed them over. He packed them in the evidence van. I pause. Monroe then led us to the evac entrance of the courthouse. The blast hole is covered with a tarpaulin. The inside smell of singed paper drifts out. He told us no cameras, no recordings. This is now a restricted crime scene. He said the only way to get answers was to come in person tomorrow, if the building reopens. I gripped the recorder. He spoke for a minute about controlled burns, incendiary chemicals, accelerants. None match anything we have. He said the FBI would probably take over. My voice is hollow. I asked about timelines, about the photo showing us at 7:06 before we arrived at 7:32. He stared. "We don't have time travel in law enforcement," he said. "And if you find a way to do it, please tell me." He paused. Then he lowered his voice. "This whole thing, files appearing, evidence vanishing, photos from the future, sounds like someone wants to send you a message." I swallow. He didn't think it was supernatural. He thought it was psychological warfare. A twisted mind using props to terrorize us. He said he'd assign a detective, a strong skeptic, apparently, but between the evac and roadblocks, I doubt we'll see answers today. I step back into the car. Clara slides in beside me, face drawn. I press record. 7:50 a.m. We decided to head home, to face it again, to call Anita's backup at the state lab. Maybe they can reconstruct the evidence from photos, from chain of custody logs. We'll hand over everything, even if it's nothing, even if it's a matchbook or an empty glove bag. I pause, glance at the recorder. The LED pulses. I'm doing this for the listeners who believed in episode 1, for those who stuck through the nightmares in episode 4, for Clara, who risked everything to help me, and for me, because if I don't face it, if I hide forever, he wins. I clear my throat. 7:57 a.m. We cross the courthouse steps again, empty, we're the only civilians. I look back at the tarped blast hole. It beckons, like open jaws. The morning sun slashes through the fog. The air is sharp, metallic. I taste fear. I lean toward the mic. I'm going in alone. Clara says she'll wait in the car, that she's done. But this is my story, my house, my nightmares. I swallow. I'll search the chambers where Anita's samples were retested. I'll comb every corridor. If I find the matchbook's origin, or trace the incendiary's residue, or if I see that handprint on a fresh surface, I'll know it isn't just a sick prank. It's something else. I close my eyes. 8:02 a.m. I push the front door open. It creaks. I step into the foyer. The smell of scorched paper and damp ash hits me. The silence presses in. I feel his presence before I see him. I pause. My voice drops to a whisper so low I can barely hear it. He's standing at the far end of the hall, dark hoodie, head down. But when I switch on my flashlight app, his face is gone. Just a hood stuffed with shadows. I exhale. I ask, "Who are you?" No answer. Then he raises a hand, and in it he holds my recorder, the one I just dropped in the car. My voice shakes. He presses the play button. My voice echoes through the empty hall. April 10th, 2021, 8:02 a.m. I'm standing in the courthouse. He smiles behind the hood and tilts his head. "Now you remember," he says. "Now you truly remember." I choke on my breath. He steps forward, and the hall stretches. The walls seem to warp. The timestamps on the doors, room 207, lab 102, change before my eyes, ticking backward. My throat closes. I realize then, this place isn't real anymore. It's a memory loop, and I'm trapped in it, reliving evidence I can't hold, faces I can't see, time I can't trust. I clear my throat one last time. This is the end of my story. I don't know if I'll ever escape this courthouse, this warped timeline. I don't know if yesterday is tomorrow or if tomorrow is now. All I know is he's standing right behind me, and he asked one question. My voice drops to a rasp. "Do you remember who you are?" The recorder clicks off. Silence. I never imagined how quiet the world could feel at 3:15 in the morning, until that night. I'm recording this from inside a rented 2-bedroom bungalow on the outskirts of Willow Creek, Ohio. Population just under 5,000. Tucked between cornfields and a creaky rail line. My name is Sarah, and I'm not a cop or a detective, just someone who thought moving back to my hometown would be safe. I remember drifting in and out of sleep, wrapped in a scratchy wool blanket that smelled faintly of mothballs and stale wood smoke. The single bedside lamp cast a dim pool of amber light across the room. On my nightstand, my phone screen glowed. 3:07 a.m. I'd fallen asleep to the hum of my white noise machine, set to rainstorm. But when the tapping started, it sliced through the patter of droplets like a guillotine. It was so soft at first I questioned whether I'd really heard it. A single, measured knock, 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 against the living room window. I sat up, pulse stuttering in my throat. My skin prickled. The hairs on my forearms stood on end. I swallowed, tasting copper on my tongue, and flicked off the white noise machine. Silence. Outside, only the shiver of wind through the wheat fields. 3 minutes later it came again, tap, 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 louder this time, more deliberate. I slipped from the bed, bare feet cold on planks that creaked under my weight. My heartbeat drummed in my ears. I reached the hall, every breath a conscious effort, and peeked around the corner. The living room curtains lay half drawn. I inched toward the window, each step measured. I could smell the faint tang of my own sweat mixed with the dampness of midnight air seeping in through the cracks in the window frame. "Who's there?" My voice cracked as I whispered, but only my own echo answered. I backed away and grabbed the pair of binoculars I kept in a drawer. I don't know why I'd brought them, but in that moment they felt like the only defense I had. I raised them to my eyes and focused on the narrow porch illuminated by the weak glow of a single, flickering outdoor bulb. No one. Just the dark silhouette of my rust-streaked swing set and the overgrown grass bending in the breeze. Then, another sound. The soft scrape of metal against concrete. I yanked the binoculars down, heart slamming against ribs. My hand found the flashlight on the coffee table. I clicked it on. The beam cut a stark white slash across the room, landing on the window. Outside, I saw a dark shape hunching near the sill, someone adjusting a slim tool, maybe a crowbar. My breath caught. In that instant, I didn't think of calling 911. Instead, I flicked off the lamp and ducked behind the armchair. I pressed my back flat against its torn upholstery, pulses of dread rattling my chest. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my friend Mark. "Checking in, you good?" I let it vibrate, better not to move. Slowly, I edged toward the door to the basement, my only escape route. I could picture the layout from the walkthrough. A back door, then a short flight of concrete steps, then the barely lit alley behind the garage. I tried to silence my breath, curling my fingers around the flashlight. I thought, I can't believe this is happening. I should have stayed in the city. The front door groaned. He was inside. My flashlight beam danced across the peeling paint on the hallway walls. My fingers trembled so violently I nearly dropped it. I remembered the kit I'd stashed under the sink. Pepper spray, a small utility knife, and a digital voice recorder. I tucked the recorder in my pocket. Anything to capture evidence in case, God, in case. And then I saw it. A dark smudge on the edge of the door frame. Fresh fingerprint, smeared but distinct enough to dust later. My mind latched onto it, a clue. Who was he? A local? A stranger? I had to know. My phone's time glowed, 3:22 a.m., exactly 15 minutes since the first knock. I clicked on the recorder with shaking fingers and whispered, "This is Sarah, recording log. Suspected intrusion. Fingerprint, possible crowbar, unknown subject." The dust motes in the beam looked like floating specks of ash. I listened as the front door unlocked with a soft click. My breath caught. The first floor hall was silent, but upstairs the floorboards creaked. 2 floors above me, where my bedroom lay empty, the covers still rumpled. I thought of my little sister Molly, who would stay here on weekends. She'd gone home to Columbus yesterday, thank God. The basement doorknob rattled. I squeezed the recorder. My legs felt like jelly. I recalled the dispatcher's training I'd once heard about, how they coach you to stay calm, give the location details immediately. I mouthed the words, "Dispatch. Intrusion in progress. Willow Creek, Oak Street. Unknown suspect. Please hurry." I stood at the threshold of the basement door, wavering. The stale smell of mold and oil wafted up, mixing with the faint sweetness of the cherry-scented candle I'd burned earlier. The concrete stairs were cold underfoot as I descended. At the bottom, the back door was just within reach, silver handle scuffed but sturdy. I put my hand on the knob. Then I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy, methodical. My heart lurched into my throat. I had one shot. I turned and clicked on the utility knife, the blade snapping into place with a sharp hiss. My flashlight beam swung and caught the intruder's eyes, dark, wide, and unmoving. He froze, chest heaving. I swallowed hard, voice trembling. "Stay back." He didn't respond. Instead, he lifted a small, worn leather notebook from his pocket and tossed it at my feet. It landed open on a page scribbled with my full name and address, underlined twice. My skin crawled. How did he know me? How did he find the rental agreement? And why had he come prepared with notes? Sirens wailed in the distance, first faint, then growing louder. Relief and fear warred inside me. He looked at me, eyes narrowing, then backed toward the rusted door, slipping out into the night as the red and blue lights spilled through the cracks beneath the closed door. I stood there, gasping, staring at the notebook. Its spine was cracked, pages dog-eared. On the open page, a single line was highlighted in red. "She knows too much." The basement door burst open as officers poured down the steps, weapons drawn. I raised my hands, flashlight still shaking in my palm. I heard myself whisper, "It's okay, I'm here, he's gone." They cuffed me with gentle urgency and guided me back upstairs. Outside, officers swarmed the porch while a forensic tech in a Tyvek suit dusted for prints. The night air smelled of rain and gasoline from the patrol cars idling below. In the chaos, I realized I was shaking so hard I couldn't hold the recorder. An officer knelt beside the window I'd hidden behind. He pressed a swab to the frame. "We've got a print," he said. "Should match your scribbled notes." I forced a nod, eyes drifting to the open notebook on my fridge, where I'd taped it for safekeeping. The pages fluttered in the porch-light breeze. That notebook, this wasn't random. It pointed to someone who had studied me. Someone close enough to know my schedule, my sister's absence, even the exact time I'd come home from a late shift. And that's the part I can't shake. He didn't break in to steal, he came to send a message. What message was it? And how much did he already know? The recorder lies silent now, but the question lingers. Did I just escape, or was I always part of his plan? I waited on the edge of my seat in the back of the patrol car as it rattled down Oak Street, the red and blue light reflections dancing across the damp asphalt. The early morning sky pressed heavy with low clouds, promising a storm by dawn. My hands were cuffed behind me, but not painfully tight, just enough to keep me contained until they finished processing the scene. Behind me, in the rearview mirror, I caught a glimpse of the bungalow's front window. The swabbed frame, the spiraling flash of the forensic photographer's camera, the unlocked front door yawning like an open mouth. I could almost see my own silhouette there, frozen in fear. Against my better judgment, I asked Officer Mills, "Can I get my jacket? It's cold, and my sister's going to worry." The patrolman glanced at me from beneath his peaked cap. He radioed into his shoulder mic. "Suspect secured. Can we release civilians' property?" His partner, a younger deputy named Vega, climbed into the front seat. She had dark circles under her eyes, and I knew why. Far too many midnight calls in a department spread thin across the county. She frowned at me in the mirror. "We'll grab it on the way back," she said quietly. "Just hang tight, Sarah." The station lights blazed stark white through the windshield as we pulled into the parking lot. I'd never noticed before how the walls of Willow Creek Sheriff's Office looked like prison bars even without the prisoners. Narrow windows, reinforced doors, the tall chain-link fence demarcating the sally port. Inside the booking area, I stood on the footprint marker with the other suspects. Only I wasn't a suspect, but a victim. The deputy behind the glass took my statement. I described the window knock, the shadowy figure, the crowbar, the basement door. She typed rapidly, her lips moving in silent murmurs. I forced myself to include every detail. The timestamps, the exact words of my whispered dispatch log, the texture of the leather notebook's cover. "I understand you're shaken," she said, clicking her pen. "But we have procedures. Once we process your statement, someone from forensics will contact you to pick up prints and evidence. You'll also need to come down next Wednesday at 10 for a formal lineup if we identify a suspect." My chest tightened at lineup. The idea of standing in a row, strangers and me under the harsh fluorescence, hoping someone would point and say, "That's him," it made me nauseous. I clenched my jaw. "I'll be there," I managed. Outside, the forensic van waited, tarps flapping. A tech emerged, carrying evidence bags. I felt a strange pull toward them, as if I could lean closer and snatch back the narrative from the intruder. One bag held the leather notebook. One held the flashlight. My fingerprints smeared across the handle in a frantic panic grip. Another contained the crowbar left behind on my porch when he fled. "Make sure you log those prints as entered by victim for chain of custody," I told the tech. "That crowbar was in contact with the windowsill, so any trace evidence on it could, you know." He nodded, rolling his eyes at protocol speak, but doing it anyway. "Chain of custody is everything. We'll dust and photograph," he said. Then he tapped the evidence log. Item 4, notebook, questionable writings, possible threat. Photographed and bagged. I watched them work, each bag sealed with a white numbered sticker, each tag meticulously filled out. My mind drifted to what I'd scribbled in that notebook last week. The grocery list, a reminder to call my mother, a sketch of my old high school locker. He'd flipped past my mundane musings to find my name and address. He'd known enough about me to pick the night my sister was away, the night I'd be alone. The rain began as a fine mist, tapping on the roof of the van. The fluorescent lights of the station glowed against the wet pavement. I felt the damp chill seep into my bones. Vega handed me my jacket. Thin, canvas, the kind you buy when hope of warmth is already slim. I slipped it on over my pajamas and sweatshirt, the fabric stiff and strange against my skin. "Want coffee?" she asked softly. "Krispy Kreme on Main, hot and gratis if you get it in now." I managed a watery grin. "Yeah, I need something hot." We piled into her cruiser and headed 4 blocks to the donut shop, tires hissing on slick roads. I stared out at the storefronts. Petrified plastic plants in the windows, neon signs for 24-hour diners, the church marquee announcing Wednesday night Bible study. To anyone else, it looked like small-town America. But to me, every corner felt tainted now, every shadow a threat. In the shop, the fluorescent interior was bright enough to bleach the tension from my eyes. A sleepy teenager in a gray hoodie stood behind the counter, flipping donuts onto a display tray. She looked at me with curiosity, as if I'd walked in wearing handcuffs and a borrowed jacket. She handed me a steaming cup of black coffee, no cream, no sugar. I inhaled the bitter aroma, tasting charcoal and regret. It anchored me. Vega sat across from me at a vinyl booth, her patrol vest still on. She folded her hands. "You okay?" she asked in a whisper reserved for trauma survivors. I closed my eyes and let the coffee burn down my throat. He didn't say anything," I murmured. "No demands. No threats beyond that line. She knows too much." "What does that even mean?" She shook her head. "We'll find out." In my experience, once you get a name and address in writing, there's a story there. Could be personal, could be mistaken identity, but you did good, getting that notebook. I nodded, though I felt hollow. The night's adrenaline had worn off, leaving exhaustion like a vice squeezing my skull. My fingers traced the lip of the coffee cup, leaving tiny grease spots. "I want to review my security footage," I said. "There's a doorbell camera on the neighbor's porch 2 houses down." I didn't think to ask them before, didn't want to alarm them, but if he walked up the driveway, we need timestamps. Vega tapped at her phone. "We'll send a tech to grab it today. If they cooperate, we should have video by this afternoon." I exhaled. Good, because right now I feel like I'm living in someone else's dream. I need proof to make it real. She reached out and patted my hand. "You'll get it, and we'll keep officers on patrol around here. I'll personally run a check on registered sex offenders, prior break-ins, anything that fits this MO." We finished our coffee in silence, the hum of the shop's refrigeration buzzing in the background. Outside, the mist turned into a steady drizzle. I left a couple of bills on the table and followed Vega back to the cruiser, my jacket feeling damp and heavy. Back at the office, I sat in the interview room. Plain gray walls, a single table, 2 chairs, a CCTV camera blinking red in the corner. Detective Harland walked in. Tall, salt and pepper hair, wire-rimmed glasses perched low on his nose. He introduced himself and slid a manila folder across the table. "We've got the fingerprint results," he said, flipping it open to reveal labeled swabs. Partial match to a local. Name's Jeremy Nolan. Age 32, prior for burglary and stalking charges. Lives with his mother, 15 miles north. My heart lurched. "Nolan. I went to high school with a Jeremy Nolan," I whispered. "But we weren't close." He nodded. "We're running his address through dispatch now to see any recent leads. Also, checking for his vehicle. There's a plate on that crowbar, if you noticed." I hadn't. But now I leaned forward to the page showing a grainy photo of the tool's handle. Scratched letters, almost worn away. I traced them with my finger, H-2-X. That looks familiar," I said. My uncle worked at H2X Metal Fabrications in Cedar Glen before he moved to Wisconsin. He used tools like that. Harlan's eyes flickered. "Interesting. Could be a red herring. These crowbars are common. But it's worth checking. I'll have our evidence tech cross-reference any tooling patterns." He uncapped a pen and wrote, "Look into Nolan's employment records. Check for H2X clients." Then looked up at me, his gaze steady. "Sarah, everything you're telling us is solid. You're doing exactly what we need. We'll keep you posted." I gathered my jacket and recorder. "One more thing. My neighbor, Mrs. Collier. I'm going to talk to her about camera footage. She's usually home by 6 a.m. I'll bring you anything I get." He stood, offering a hand. "Thank you. And Sarah, be careful. If Nolan's orchestrating this, he may escalate." The words echoed as I walked into the hallway, the hum of overhead lights pulsing in time with my heartbeat. Outside, the drizzle had stopped, but left every surface slick. I shivered, not from cold, but from the weight of what was happening. I made my way 2 houses down to Mrs. Collier's porch. She opened the door in a pastel robe, umbrella in hand, her silver hair pinned up. "Detective Vega said you'd be coming," she said kindly. "You had concerns about last night?" I forced a polite smile. "Thank you for seeing me. I believe someone tried to break in last night. Could I see your doorbell camera footage from around 3 a.m.? Her expression softened. "Oh dear, that's dreadful. Of course, please, come in." Her living room was cozy, lace curtains, framed family photos, the scent of citrus air freshener. She led me to her computer in the dining nook and logged into the cloud feed. "Here we go," she said, clicking through. The timestamp read 3 a.m. to 3:30 a.m. Grainy black and white images slid by. A stray cat padding up the walk, a raccoon rifling through trash. Then, at 3:15:12, a tall figure in a dark hoodie appeared at the edge of the frame. The camera's IR glow lit his outline. He crouched, pulled something from his pocket, crowbar, unmistakable, and pried at the windowsill. My stomach dropped. I leaned closer, squinting. The figure looked up, his face half hidden under the hood. For a fleeting second I saw his jawline, the profile of his nose. It was... My throat closed. I recognized him. I sat back, feeling dizzy. That's him," I whispered, voice shaking. Mrs. Collier placed a hand over mine. "Do you know who it is, dear?" I swallowed, tasting bile. I think, yes. The realization rolled over me like a tidal wave. Someone I had once called acquaintance. Someone who knew me but I barely remembered had been stalking me, planning this intrusion. The personalness of it sparked a different terror. A betrayal deeper than fear of a stranger. Later, I handed the USB drive of the footage to Detective Harland. He watched it on his laptop in silence, then looked up. "Okay," he said. "We've got a positive ID. We'll bring Nolan in for questioning, and you'll be safe at your sister's place for a while. We'll station an officer outside your bungalow until we clear this." I nodded, exhausted. But as I walked back to my car, the notebook's words echoed, "She knows too much." What did I know? What memory had I stumbled on that made me a target? My jacket felt heavier as I drove away. Rain began again, this time in earnest, washing the streets slick and reflective. Through the windshield wiper's rhythmic sweep, I saw a flash of blue as an unmarked cruiser tailed me at a discreet distance. I thought, maybe that's the officer watching over me. But deep down, I wondered if I was the watched now, and if every turn I took was already anticipated. Time stamp, May 1st, 2025, 10:47 a.m. Evidence Review Panel, Willow Creek PD Headquarters. Inside the conference room's sterile fluorescent glare, Detective Harland pored over the case file before the Evidence Review Board. Fingerprint charts, CCTV stills, the leather notebook, swabs labeled Item 3, A to D. He tapped a finger on Nolan's rap sheet. 2 counts of stalking, 1 count of misdemeanor burglary 10 years ago. All local, grew up here, ribbons in the high school football team, head cheerleader girlfriend in 2009. Nothing violent. "But obviously something's changed," said Captain Ruiz, leaning back in his chair. "We need motive. Why target Sarah, even after 10 years of no known contact?" Harland flicked through his notes. She and Nolan had a brief friendship. They studied together for finals in 2012. She drifted away when she left for college. He stayed here, working odd jobs. The leather notebook matches a brand sold in local office supply stores in 2018. That suggests he acquired it recently. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioning. No one disputed the timeline. "We've picked up his DNA on the door frame and crowbar," Harland continued. "The only missing piece is the notebook's content beyond the name and address. I'm recommending linguistic analysis, maybe handwriting comparison to samples in his school records." Captain Ruiz nodded. "Good. In the meantime, let's bring him in. He's already at the station on an unrelated traffic violation." Time stamp, May 1st, 2025, 2:15 p.m. Willow Creek Sheriff's Station Interrogation Room A. Nolan sat across from me, his shoulders slumped, eyes hollow and red-rimmed. He was clean-shaven. Today his hair was combed back, but the same tired look remained. He wore the standard orange jail jumpsuit, the cuffs loose around his wrists. Detective Harland opened the interrogation file. "Jeremy, we have you on CCTV breaking into Sarah's home. We have your prints, your DNA, and the notebook you left behind with her personal information. Do you know why those things ended up there?" Nolan's jaw tensed. He gave me, Sarah, a look that twisted my stomach. "I needed to talk to her," he said quietly. His voice was low, ragged, as though he'd been whispering for days. "She wasn't answering," I said, my voice wavering but firm. "You saw I was alone." He looked at me, tears glimmering. "I needed her to remember." I leaned forward. "Remember what?" He closed his eyes as if recalling some distant memory. "The night by Miller's Pond. You told me not to say anything. You promised. You said it would ruin both our lives." My head snapped up. Miller's Pond, the place where a 10-year-old boy drowned. The day of the field trip. I remembered hiding behind the oak tree, watching him slip beneath the water's surface. He was a friend of mine, a neighbor's kid. We'd heard him call for help, but we froze. Nolan and I both. I swallowed. "You blame me?" He nodded, face twisting. "I watched you walk away while he screamed. You did nothing. And I couldn't let you forget." My chest constricted. That was a child's mistake. Was it? He interrupted. He died because you were too scared to help, and you never said anything afterward. You lied to the police. You lied to everyone. I saw the look on your face when they found him. I knew. He leaned forward, voice raw. You know too much because you were there. You carried that secret. And now, it's time someone paid. Silence crackled. He'd found his motive, distilled through years of resentment and grief twisted into rage. Detective Harland cleared his throat. That's enough for now. He closed the file. Jeremy Nolan, you are under arrest for attempted burglary, stalking, and terroristic threats. You have the right to remain silent. As the cuffs clicked on his wrists, I realized the truth was more terrible than fear of a stranger. It was fear of a memory I'd tried to bury, one that someone else refused to forget. And now the real terror began. What else had I repressed? The interrogation room's harsh lights faded behind me as I stepped into the hall, my recorder still humming softly in my pocket. The corridor smelled of bleach and damp carpet, clean but somehow oppressive, like a mausoleum. I rubbed my arms against an invisible chill and followed Detective Harland out into the parking lot, where his unmarked Crown Victoria idled under a flickering sodium lamp. Let's go to Nolan's place, he said, voice low. I want you there in case anything jogs your memory. I swallowed, feeling bile rise. My hands shook as I gripped the recorder's metal clip. We drove north on Route 47, past shuttered storefronts with for lease signs, the rain-slick pavement reflecting neon beer ads and the occasional passing semi. The wipers thrummed a constant, uneven rhythm, louder, slower, faster, like a staccato heartbeat. By the time we reached Nolan's mother's ramshackle farmhouse, the sky had brightened to a slate gray. The fields on either side were soggy mud flats, dotted with ragged tufts of stubborn winter wheat. The house sat back 50 feet from the road, half hidden by a stand of bare ash trees whose low branches scraped against the second-story windows, leaving pale streaks of moss. Detective Harland clicked off his radio. "Check this out," he murmured, pushing open the creaking wrought iron gate. The metal screech echoed across the empty fields. I tasted dust and rust on my tongue. Inside the narrow foyer, the air was thick with the sour tang of mildew and old cooking grease. Wallpaper peeled in broad strips from the walls, revealing raw plaster stained with damp. I ran my fingers along the banister's chipped paint, feeling the coarse grit under my fingertips. Somewhere beyond, I could hear muffled voices. Forensics techs dusting surfaces, collecting samples. Harland pointed to the floor, to a single boot print in the thin layer of mud tracked in at the front threshold. It was too small for mine, likely Nolan's. The tech photographed it, then sprayed a gentle mist of adhesive dye to highlight the tread's unique pattern, an inverted chevron with a tiny starburst at the heel. That starburst matched the print on the basement floorboards of my bungalow, item 2B in the evidence log. I held my breath, the recorder catching every rasp of shutter and click of camera. Harland led me into the cramped living room. A sagging couch with threadbare upholstery, a coffee table crowded with tattered magazines, and on the far wall, a shelf heavy with decade-old yearbooks and faded trophies. The scent of stale tobacco lingered in the carpet fibers. I spotted it immediately. A framed photograph perched crooked on the mantelpiece. Nolan, as a scrawny teenager, arm slung around a smiling boy I recognized. Miller's pond victim, Jason Tucker. The glass was dusty, but someone had recently wiped a thumbprint across the lower right corner, leaving a clean semicircle. I stooped to examine it, breathing in the faint, sweet mustiness of the photo paper. "Look at this," I whispered. "He kept it." My voice cracked, and I had to swallow twice to steady the croak. Harland snapped photos, then called quietly over his shoulder to the techs. Bag the print from the photo frame as Item 5B. Also check the photomat for any trace DNA. In the kitchen, a yellowed post-it note clung to the refrigerator door with a single magnet. Don't let her forget. The scrawl matched the handwriting sample from Nolan's high school journals. Tight loops, jagged edges, a deliberate flourish on the trailing R. My finger traced the letters. My stomach churned. This was clue number 3 in this house alone. On the counter lay a half-empty mug of cold coffee, rings of dried liquid caked around the base. I cupped the handle, surprised by the warmth still lingering in the porcelain. I could smell the acrid bitterness of burnt grounds. I brought it to my lips, just a sip, stale, brown water, but enough to anchor me in reality. Detective Harland paused at the door to the back porch. A gust of wind rattled the bamboo blind through which pale light filtered. He kicked it aside and revealed a small, overgrown yard. Muddy footprints led from the porch steps to a sagging wooden shed. He lifted a corner of the shed's rotting door, revealing stacks of cardboard boxes, filing boxes overflowing with newspaper clippings, correspondence, and what looked like high school essays. I approached, the floorboards groaning beneath my weight. I peered into one box marked Sarah Bradley, 2012, in Nolan's handwriting. Inside, I found test print copies of our old college essays. Essays I never shared outside my campus folder, alongside torn pages from my private journal. The margins of one entry were underlined. I wish I had stayed to help Jason. Beneath it, Nolan had scrawled in blood-red ink, "You promised. Remember." My breath caught so hard I thought I'd black out. "Item 6C, Harland said quietly, placing the box into an evidence bag. He looked at me, concern creasing his brow. "He's been obsessively archiving you." I pressed my palm to my mouth, the rough wood splintering a sliver through my glove. The weight of years pressed on me in that cramped space. Shame, guilt, betrayal. I had tried to bury that day by Miller's Pond. Nolan had never let me. As the wind picked up, rattling the shed's tin roof, I could almost hear Jason's voice in the distance, a child's laughter swallowed by waves. The memory surged, the splash, the desperate gurgle, the futile scramble of small hands against silt. I had closed my eyes. I had run. Outside, Detective Harland radioed for the techs to sweep the fields for discarded evidence. I stood on the porch, the wet wood cold beneath my boots. The sky darkened as clouds skittered by, promising thunder. I drew a shaky breath and asked, "Why show me all this now? Why not just arrest him?" Harlan's reply was measured. "Because you need to face it. Nolan's plan was never just to scare you. He wanted to break you, to force you to live that guilt every day. And now, we need you at the lineup to confirm it's him. It's your face he can't forget." My chest tightened at the thought. Another lineup, this time, to identify the man who had haunted my memories for years. I thought of my sister's empty bed in the bungalow, of Mrs. Collier's concerned eyes, of Detective Vega's gentle reassurance over coffee. I walked to the edge of the yard and touched the mud streak along the porch step. His boot print, now bagged as Item 4A, the cold, wet earth clung to my glove. "I'll do it," I said, voice barely above a whisper. "But after that, I need to know he can never come near me again." Harland nodded. "Agreed. One more step, Sarah. Then we close this." The wind gusted again, rattling the shed and the trees beyond it. Somewhere, thunder rolled. If you'd like to hear what happens at the line, the fluorescent glare of the booking room lights was relentless, as though they were trying to burn away any last trace of doubt or fear. I sat on the edge of the metal bench, pulse loud in my ears, watching Detective Harlan step back into the interrogation room with a somber expression. Beyond the one-way glass, Jeremy Nolan stood in the center of the lineup chamber, high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle, his elbows resting on his knees, head bowed. The other 4 men, similar builds, average height, generic jumpsuits, sat slumped and silent. I could see dust motes drifting in the narrow slat of sunlight that pierced the blinds at the far end. My stomach knotted as I was escorted into the room by Deputy Vega, who whispered, "You ready?" Her breath came in soft puffs that carried the faintest scent of peppermint gum. I nodded, though my legs felt shaky, and forced myself to breathe evenly. The officer closed the heavy door behind me. The air felt thick, like a glass of cold water left out to warm. There was the hum of the ventilation grate above, a steady, mechanical sigh. I could hear my own heartbeat thudding against my ribcage. My recorder was clipped to my jacket pocket, silent but ready. Harland took his place at the head of the semicircle. He tapped his pen against the file folder on his clipboard. "Sarah, if you'd please stand in that spot." He pointed to a marked X on the floor, 6 feet directly opposite the chairs. My shoes tapped against the polished concrete as I crossed the room, each click echoing. I stood on the X. The officer behind me held a flashlight, trained on my face briefly before turning it off. The faces before me were faintly illuminated by the overhead lights. My eyes darted across the row. Number 1 had a crooked nose and a nervous tic. Number 2 wore a blank expression that made him look like a mannequin. Number 3 fiddled with his collar. Number 4 yawned and scratched at his neck. And number 5, seated in the exact middle, was Jeremy Nolan. His posture was identical to his photo in the mugshot, the same narrow shoulders and restless hands. His gaze, however, hovered somewhere above me, not quite meeting my eyes. Harland cleared his throat. "First, we'll go through the identification process standard to all lineups. Sarah, when you're ready, please indicate which individual you believe entered your home on the morning of April 30th. He handed me a card with the 5 dots labeled 1 to 5. If none of these are him, you may choose none. My throat felt parched. I wet my lips, tasting the faint tang of metal. I looked at each man in turn, scanning for the features I had glimpsed on the CCTV. The slight jut of the chin, the hollow under the left eye, the way his shoulders sloped forward in a cautious hunch. My gaze lingered on number 5. The ridges of his cheekbones, the subtle tremor in his right hand, they were too familiar. I closed my eyes for a fraction of a second and replayed the video in my mind, the hood drawn low, the deliberate movements, the way he paused to glance at the camera before prying open my window. That silhouette, thin, methodical, haunted. When I opened my eyes, I pressed the dot next to number 5. "Are you certain?" Harland asked quietly, though his voice carried more weight than any shout. My chest tightened. "Yes," I exhaled, feeling the tremor in my shoulders finally loosen. "That's him." Harland nodded and signaled to the officer, who stepped forward and tapped Nolan's shoulder. "Jeremy Nolan," he said, voice calm but firm. "You're the one Miss Bradley has identified. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you." Nolan's head snapped up. His eyes, once so vacant, locked onto mine. For a heartbeat, the room fell silent, except for the faint click of the flashlight being turned off. In his gaze, I saw not anger this time, but a raw vulnerability, as though in that moment he realized the consequences of his actions. He was unmasked, not by the hood or the flashlight, but by the truth in my eyes. The officer led him out, and the door sealed with an echoing thud. I sank onto the bench, every muscle drained. Vega slid into the seat beside me and slipped her coat around my shoulders. The fabric smelled faintly of laundry soap. "It's over," she whispered. "You did it." I closed my eyes and let her words wash over me, though I knew it wasn't over. For me or for him. The memory of Miller's Pond still twisted in my chest, and now the weight of what had followed had been laid bare in blood-red ink and obsessive scrapbooks. There would be sentencing hearings, countless interviews, more evidence to sift through. But in this moment, I allowed myself a single exhale. That afternoon, I sat alone in my bungalow, the air thick with the smell of fresh coffee and dust. On the small folding table under the window, I'd laid out every piece of evidence. The crowbar with its inverted chevron print, the swabbed fingerprint card, the notebook with my name and address, the handwritten post-it, the Newsweek clipping about Miller's Pond tragedy, now marked with evidence tags 1A through 6C. Each item was sealed in its own plastic pouch, labeled in bold black ink. The forensic photos framed the scene like stills from a horror film. My trembling flashlight beam on the front window, the boot prints on the porch, the handprint on the photo frame. I ran my fingers along the edge of one pouch, the leather notebook, feeling the ridged plastic. I closed my eyes and smelled the faint scent trapped inside. Old paper and my own shampoo mingled in memory. Every page I'd read aloud in the precinct now lay flat before me, and I could still hear the echo of Nolan's voice. "You promised. Remember?" My phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "How are you holding up?" I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I poured another cup of coffee. Strong, black, with ground settling at the bottom, and carried it out to the yard. The late afternoon sun slanted through the trees, flickering through new leaves that were still the pale green of early spring. I sat on the creaky swing beneath the porch roof, the chains rattling in the breeze, and sipped. The warm liquid burned down my throat, a reminder that I was here, alive, and no longer some shadow in someone else's obsession. I closed my eyes and listened. The distant hum of traffic on Route 47, the song of a meadowlark overhead, the clink of my spoon against the ceramic mug. A parade of memories swept through me. The laughter of my sister when we were kids, the smell of our mother's Sunday pancakes, Nolan's shy smile as he handed me my calculus notes in high school. All of it colliding with the horror of what he'd done, stalking me, cataloging my life, prying into my home, forcing me to relive that day when Jason drowned. A gust of wind picked up cherry blossoms from the neighbor's tree and sent them spiraling through the air like pink snow. One landed on my coffee, petals soaking up the dark liquid. I watched it float, petals curling at the edges, and thought about transformation. How a person's face could shift from friend to fiend, how memories could harden into weapons, and how, at the end of it all, one choice, my choice, had the power to bring the truth into the light. I finished the coffee and carried the mug back inside. On the table, the evidence lay waiting for the next step. Arraignment, trial, sentencing. But even as I prepared for what was next, a quiet resolve settled in my bones. I'd faced the nightmare he built around me, forced him into the open, and reclaimed the narrative he had tried to own. Still, as the sun dipped low and the shadows lengthened across the planks, a new question took shape in my mind. If confronting the past had freed me from his obsession, what secret remained in the darkness, buried beneath the dirt of Miller's Pond and the margins of my teenage journal? What truth, if uncovered, might bring absolute closure, or unleash something even more terrifying? Night would come soon, and with it the low hum of the white noise machine and the soft creak of the porch swing. I reached for the recorder on the table, pressed play, and listened to my own voice rattling through the speaker. The leftover static seemed to whisper promises of revelation. I took a breath, placed the recorder back, and stepped out onto the porch. The cicadas were waking up, 1,000 tiny motors droning in the twilight. I closed my eyes and tilted my face to the sky, where the first stars were blinking awake. In the gathering dark, I whispered into the wind, "What did you want me to remember?" Up, and what secret Nolan reveals when our eyes meet. Type, I sat in the witness room at the courthouse early the next morning, the fluorescent lights humming overhead, the chairs stiff and metallic, the air-conditioned chill creeping through my thin canvas jacket. It was May 3rd, 2025, 8:15 a.m., exactly 48 hours since Jeremy Nolan's identification in the lineup. My heart fluttered each time the heavy oak door creaked open down the hall. Papers rustled, coffee cups clinked. A bailiff's polished shoes tapped against the terrazzo floor as he passed. Every sensory detail stoked my nerves, the smell of bleach from freshly mopped corridors, the faint musk of old carpet, the distant echo of typewriters and raised voices. Detective Harland arrived at 8:30, briefcase in hand, face drawn but resolute. He slid into the seat across from me, his suit jacket folded carefully over his arm. "We've got the arraignment at 9, so we'll just go over the exhibits one more time," he said, opening his folder. His breath smelled of strong black coffee and mint gum. He laid out the sealed evidence bags. Item 1A, the crowbar, 2B, the fingerprint card, 3C, the leather notebook, 4A, Nolan's boot print, 5B, the photo frame palm print, 6C, the shed box of my private journals. Each bag's tag glinted under the fluorescent light. I nodded, watching the badge-numbered officer place the red rope barrier outside the door. Journalists with notepads hovered in the hallway, their lenses aimed like vultures. The courtroom itself was behind another set of doors, tall and imposing, engraved with the scales of justice. As we rose to head in, I felt the weight of every stare, every whispered inquiry, victim or suspect. What really happened at Miller's Pond? My throat tightened. I adjusted my recorder in my pocket, my fail-safe, my truth-teller. Inside the courtroom, wood-paneled walls rose toward a lofty ceiling. The judge's bench dominated the center, flags flanking either side, the seal of Ohio emblazoned in gold behind it. Spectators clustered in the back rows, neighbors from Mrs. Collier's street, Nolan's mother with hollowed eyes ringed in purple, my sister Molly clutching a tissue in the front row. The bailiff called the room to order, gavels barely audible over the murmurs. I could feel the bench's polished wood under my fingertips as I signed in at the clerk's table. When Nolan was brought in, his stance had shifted. Gone was the haunted slump of yesterday's interrogation. Now he stood ramrod straight, eyes leveled on mine, lips pressed in a thin line. He wore the standard gray jumpsuit. His ankles and wrists were shackled. The prosecutor approached with a screen of exhibits and evidence lists. She spoke clearly. "Your Honor, the state charges Jeremy Nolan with attempted burglary, stalking, and terroristic threats under Ohio Revised Code Sections 2911.12, 290.3.21, and 2909.26. Procedural language rolled off her tongue. Counts, probable cause, bail recommendations. The judge, an elderly man with wire-rimmed glasses perched at the end of his nose, peered down at the file. "Miss Bradley," he asked, nodding toward me, "will you be testifying today?" My pulse spiked. Was I ready to speak in that cavernous space under oath? I swallowed, tasting copper. "Yes, Your Honor," I whispered, voice barely audible. My sister squeezed my shoulder. I inhaled the antiseptic air and stood. They swore me in. Lamb's wool powder puff brush. Do you solemnly swear? And I took the stand. The hush that fell was almost tangible. Fluorescent lights fell across the defense table. Nolan's gaze was fixed on me, unwavering. My recorder lay open on the witness stand table, proving I'd recorded every word. The prosecutor guided me through each exhibit. The time I first heard the knock at 3:07 a.m., my phone log. The fingerprint lifted at 3:22 a.m. The notebook's highlighted name and address. The crowbar abandoned at 3:24 a.m. The shed full of my personal papers logged at 10:45 a.m. the previous day. Each detail drilled into the court record. When I described the leather notebook, how its crackled pages smelled of old ink and dust, the red ink message, "She knows too much," I felt my fingernails bite into my palms. I saw Nolan shift in his seat, jaw clenching. The gallery leaned forward. The foreman of the jury scribbled notes. My descriptive language was vivid. The grain of the notebook's leather, the brittle snap as I turned the pages, the way the red ink shimmered under the porch light. I invoked every sense. The metallic tang of fear, the rasp of my breath, the cold of that basement threshold. The defense attorney then cross-examined me. His voice was smooth, calm. "Miss Bradley, is it not true you have your own history of withholding information from the police?" he asked, eyes narrowing. My heart jerked. He held up a printed excerpt from my high school journal, the one from the shed box. On the page, in my teenage scrawl, I'd written about the pond incident. Why didn't I help Jason? I couldn't move. My cheeks burned. He leaned in. "You lied to authorities in 2012. You said you saw nothing. Then you blamed Nolan, isn't that right?" Memory flared. My 14-year-old self frozen by fear. Nolan beside me, both of us too stunned to act. I exhaled. I was afraid, I admitted, voice wavering. I panicked. I was a child, the court murmured. The attorney pressed, "And isn't it true you fabricated some details of Mr. Nolan's behavior to cope with your guilt?" He cited lines I'd written. He kept looking at me. I shook my head, eyes stinging. I only blamed him because we were both there. My voice steadied. Today, I'm telling the truth. Detective Harlan stood in redirect. He spoke of the methodical evidence collection, the forensic matches, the CCTV footage, the shrine Nolan built in that shed. He detailed the bootprint patterns, the DNA swabs, the timestamp serrations in the video metadata. I watched Nolan's shoulders slump again. The judge nodded gravely as the prosecutor requested a protective order and no contact clause. The judge's gavels echoed as bail was set at $1 million. Nolan was remanded to custody. As the courtroom emptied, my sister rushed to hug me, her tears damp on my blouse. I smelled her lavender shampoo and felt her heartbeat hammer against my chest. Outside, the rain flared into a downpour, pattering against the courthouse steps. Later that afternoon, I returned to the bungalow to pack. Molly had offered me her apartment in Columbus. As I crossed the threshold, the familiar creak of the front door greeted me. The living room was eerily quiet. The windowsill still bore the forensic tags. The coffee table still held the evidence bags. Sunlight, diffused by heavy rain clouds, flickered through the blinds. I slid open the fridge and found the cherry-scented candle I'd burned in the basement. Melted wax pooled at its base. I lifted it, tasted the faint sweetness on my tongue, remembered the smell of musty cellar air mixed with cherry. In the hallway, I paused before the door to Molly's room, her bed still rumpled from her last weekend visit. I inhaled the faint scent of her lavender sheets. Under the dresser, I spotted a small envelope I hadn't noticed before. It was yellow manila, unsealed, addressed to me in Nolan's handwriting. For when you remember. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a single Polaroid photograph. I didn't recognize the setting, only a wooded clearing. And in the frame I saw my own face from 10 years ago, smiling as I held Jason's hand at the pond's edge. On the back, scrawled in blue ink, were 2 lines. Look deeper. You buried her, but she never left. My heart stuttered. I pressed the photo to my chest, felt the glossy image buckle against my beat. I realized this was Nolan's final piece of evidence, a confession and a directive in one. He wanted me to dig into the past, to uncover something I'd hidden even from myself. As thunder rumbled overhead, I recalled the night I'd crept out to that same clearing after the incident, unearthed something small and buried it beneath a tree. Something I never admitted even in my journal. The rain lashed against the windows, each drop a pulse of urgency. I sank to the floor, legs folded beneath me, clutching the Polaroid. My senses shivered. The sweet must of the candle, the damp cane of the wood floor against my palm, the distant hiss of rainfall mixing with my ragged breathing. I looked at the photo again. The girl in the picture, me, but younger, held something dark and dripping in her free hand. Was it Jason's bracelet? His hair? Something I couldn't bear to name. My mouth went dry. I remembered burying it, believing that would silence my guilt, but Nolan had exhumed it through obsession. Thunder cracked overhead as I pressed a hand to my mouth. My recorder lay on the couch, untouched since court. I thought of pressing play, of hearing Nolan's voice one more time. But even without his words, I felt the weight of his command. Look deeper. You buried her, but she never left. I rose, rainwater seeping in through the open door, and made my way to the clearing where the Polaroid had been taken. My boots squeaked on the wet grass outside the porch. Every step toward the old oak tree across the yard felt like the crunch of bone against soil. The storm's energy crackled around me. Bent at the waist, I began to dig with my bare hands into the loam. Mud caked between my fingers, slick and cold. I remembered the shape of my crime and the promise I'd made to repress it. The earth yielded with each pull. I felt something wood-like, smooth. I unburied a small box, its lid cracked, hinges rusted. I lifted it, heart thrumming like a war drum. Inside was the locket, a tarnished silver heart, and inside the tiny photograph of Jason's face. Below it, a smear of dark rivulet, hair, or something darker still. My breath caught as I realized this was the secret Nolan had forced me to remember, and the evidence piece that could convict me as an accessory, not just a witness. I pressed the locket to my chest, rain mixing with tears down my cheeks. The wind howled through the clearing, the oak groaned above me, and in the distance I heard the sirens, returning, converging on my bungalow. My skin tingled with dread and exhilaration all at once. I closed my hand around the locket and looked up at the sky, where thunderheads massed like judgment. The line between victim and perpetrator blurred. Nolan's twisted justice had forced me to unearth not only evidence of his obsession, but my own buried complicity. I stood in the pouring rain, locket in hand, and whispered to the storm, "Which of us is the real monster?" I barely had time to process the weight of the silver locket in my palm before the wail of sirens tore through the night. The rain pounded my back, each drop like a hammer blow, and I could taste mud in my mouth as I rose, locket still clenched in my fist. The clearing around Nolan's farmhouse was lit by flashing red and blue strobes, the thunder of uprooted oak leaves overhead echoing in my ears. Time. Stamp. May 4th, 2025, 11:22 p.m. Nolan Mother's Farm clearing. I stood alone in the downpour as 2 patrol cars and a sheriff's SUV converged on the farmhouse gate. The wet grass squelched beneath my boots. My jacket was soaked through, clinging to my skin like a second layer. I could hear the high-pitched chirp of the sheriff's radio mixed with the low rumble of thunder. In the glare of the cruiser's spotlights, I raised my free hand to shield my eyes from the rain-smeared beams. "Sarah." Detective Harlan's voice drifted through the storm, tinted with urgency and shock. He and 2 deputies emerged from the porch of the farmhouse, badges glinting, guns holstered but ready. Each step they took splashed through muddy puddles. Officer Vega was at his side, her dark hair plastered to her forehead, eyes wide. I held up the locket. "I found it," I gasped, voice cracking. "It's the proof Nolan was forcing me to remember." My words were swallowed by another rumble of thunder. Harlan's expression shifted from protectiveness to professional caution. "Step away from that, Sarah," he ordered, tone firm but gentle. "Hands where I can see them." I reluctantly extended the locket. Rain sluiced over it, making the tarnished silver gleam. He took it with a gloved hand and slipped it into an evidence bag, sealing it with a crisp zip. The bag's label read Item 7A, Recovered Locket, Potential Accessory Evidence. I shivered, cold and adrenaline knotted. "Is it over?" I asked, my teeth chattering. The clearing smelled of wet earth and gasoline from the idling patrol cars. "No," Harlan said, voice low. "I need you to come with us, in uniform. You're a victim, but we need your statement about this." The deputy slid handcuffs onto my wrists, loose around my gloved skin, merely symbolic for chain of custody, as they explained later. I was guided into the back of the sheriff's SUV. The wet leather seat beneath me smelled of stale coffee and vinyl. Vega climbed in beside me, offering her parka to drape over my shoulders. I curled inward, pressing against damp metal. Timestamp: May 4th, 2025, 11:45 p.m., Willow Creek Sheriff's Station. The booking room felt smaller than I remembered. Pale linoleum floor, glaring overhead fluorescents, walls painted institutional gray. The desk was strewn with open case files, half-finished coffee cups and binoculars that must have belonged to my early morning stakeout. Harlan closed the door behind us, flipping on a small desk lamp that cast a pool of yellow light in the corner. "Sit," he said, nodding to a vinyl stool bolted to the floor. As I sank onto it, the metal ring around the base scraped. Vega crossed her arms, boots tapping gently on the floor. Both deputies stood guard near the door. Harlan retrieved the locket bag, placing it on the desk beside my recorder. The tag was smudged with raindrops. He slid a clean sheet of paper toward me. "I need you to tell me, in as much detail as you can, what happened tonight, starting with finding this." I inhaled, tasting the acrid scent of coffee and bleach in the room. My gloves were still damp. I peeled them off, feeling the numb ache in my fingers. I recounted every movement. Digging the soil, brushing mud off the tiny box, prying it open to reveal the tarnished heart-shaped locket, the brittle photograph inside, and the smear of dark residue along its edge. I described the texture of the box's rusted hinges, the scratching sound as I pried it free from the earth, the cloying smell of wet wood and decay in the clearing. He followed a strict protocol. For every statement I made, he recorded the time, date, and exact phrasing in block letters on the evidence log. "Confirmed on audio at 11:32 p.m., he noted after I described the storm's thunder capturing it on my recorder. "Record file SARAH0524_CL6. Then he slid another evidence bag across the desk. This one contained the Polaroid I'd found on the porch. Its glossy surface was speckled with rain droplets trapped beneath the plastic. Item 7B, Polaroid, location unknown. He traced the outline of the wet envelope it arrived in. Who do you think took this? I swallowed. My throat ached. Nolan, I said, voice barely a whisper. He must have brought it here to force me to confess. The deputy at the door unsealed a manila folder and placed it beside the Polaroid bag. In it, we have Nolan's attorney's request for an insanity evaluation, citing your involvement as potential coercion. You realize they could argue your trauma influenced his actions? My stomach twisted. I don't care. I needed to know the truth. Harland folded his hands. Understood, but this changes our case. You're not just a witness. You're a possible participant, or at least someone who concealed evidence for years. We have to clarify your role before proceeding. My breath stalled. I thought of the Lockett's photograph, me at Miller's Pond, smiling, clutching Jason's trembling hand as water lapped at our ankles. And beneath the photo, the residue. I'd always assumed it was mud, but now I realized how dark and glistening it looked, like something else. My heart pounded so loud I thought it might echo off the walls. Vega stepped forward. We're going to secure the bungalow, get a search warrant for the rest of your property. Anything you've hidden, like the box you buried tonight, needs to be accounted for. You should probably think carefully about your next words. I nodded slowly, the fluorescent glare bouncing off the recorder's red rec light. I cleared my throat. My mouth was dry. I want to tell the truth, I said. All of it, from the moment Jason fell. Harland looked at Vega, then returned his gaze to me. If you give a full statement now, we can avoid any appearance of tampering. But you must be completely honest. Tears stung my eyes. The room smelled like damp cotton and freshly sharpened pencils. I closed my eyes and inhaled. The sirens outside had faded to a distant hum, replaced by the steady drip of water from my coat onto the linoleum. I felt the world narrow down to my voice, my heart, the tape recording everything. I was there, I began, voice trembling. When Jason sank, I ran. Nolan and I, we both ran. We made a pact never to speak of it. But something died in me that day, and I buried it, along with his bracelet. I hesitated, then added, the residue in the locket. It's not mud, it's hair. Jason's hair, I kept it. Silence stretched. Vega's hand went to her hip, fingers brushing the grip of her sidearm. Harland leaned forward, pen poised. You preserved a relic from a child's body. I nodded, tears streaming down my cheeks. I thought holding on to it would keep him with me. But Nolan turned it into a weapon. The recorder clicked as I continued, voice raw. Every shameful detail from that day, how I'd wrapped his hair strands in a scrap of my dress, how I'd shoved the bundle into a hollow beneath the oak's roots, how I never told anyone. Each word felt like pulling a splinter of bone through my flesh. The deputy scribbled, admitted concealment of human tissue, potential felony obstruction. Time stamp, May 5th, 2025, 12:37 a.m., Willow Creek Sheriff's Station interview room. When I finished, my throat was raw, and the sticky tape on my wrists chafed my skin. Harland looked at Vega. She exhaled heavily. She's being truthful now, Vega said, voice soft. It's mitigating, but we have to treat it as evidence. Harland tapped his pen 3 times, then closed his notebook. We'll recommend to the prosecutor that your statement be given full weight, showing remorse and cooperation. But under Ohio Revised Code, Section 29, 21.1, 2, concealment of evidence is a third-degree felony. We'll need a search warrant for your property and formal charges. You can consult an attorney, but I'd advise you to stay cooperative." I nodded numbly, feeling the ticking of my heart like a metronome. Outside, a storm cell was passing, and I heard water sluicing through the gutters. The muggy scent of rain clung to the station's door. Vega uncuffed me. "Walk with me," she said, guiding me down the hall. She closed the door behind us. "You're going to be okay," she whispered, "but you have to face what you did." My legs shook as I followed her to the holding desk, where I reclaimed my phone and jacket. The deputy told me an officer would escort me to the courthouse to file my statement in the morning. I could hear Nolan's muffled cell door clang somewhere nearby. When I stepped out into the night air, the sky had cleared, leaving a glassy moon above. The station lights glowed against the wet pavement. I inhaled the cold air. It tasted of ozone and washed earth. I buttoned my jacket and felt the weight of the locket's absence in my pocket, a hollow ache where guilt had once rested. As I walked to the cruiser, Vega called after me, "Remember, truth is your only ally now." I paused under the moonlight, tracing the path back to my bungalow in my mind. Past the oak tree, past the grove where I'd buried that hair, past the threshold I hadn't crossed since the intruder first came. Every step felt like coming home to a confession. Epilogue. Unsheathed Secrets. Later, in my sister's apartment in Columbus, I sat on the edge of her bed, the walls suffused with the scent of lavender. Moonlight slipped through the blinds. I held the Polaroid Nolan had sent. My younger self smiling beside Jason, hair tangled in my palm. I touched the dark smear on the photo, where blood or hair residue still clung, and felt the last knot of my denial unravel. I knew tomorrow's arraignment would be brutal. Charges of obstruction, evidence of my concealment on record, Nolan's case now including my confession. The county prosecutor would use every word I gave. My sister slept soundly down the hall. I envied her innocence. I pressed play on my recorder, my own voice rattling through the static, but the tape was jammed at the moment I said, "I buried it." It rattled and hissed. I ejected it, let the spool spin loose. The final question hung in the spool's empty space. Was I a victim, a perpetrator, or something in between? In the hush, I realized the truth. Some secrets don't die buried. They demand to be unearthed, no matter the cost. And now, stripped of my silence, I would have to live with the answer, and the verdict that awaited me at dawn. I signed in at the Franklin County Courthouse before dawn on May 6, 2025. The lobby's marble floor was cold under my boots, each echoing footstep swallowed by the cavernous atrium. I could taste the stale air, hints of cleaning solvent and printer toner, on my tongue as I showed the bailiff my subpoena and stepped through the heavy oak doors into courtroom 3B. The clock above the bench read 8:05 a.m. My sister Molly sat in the front row, clutching a legal pad, her pen poised but unmoving. Behind her, Mrs. Collier from 2 doors down sat with her husband, both dressed in Sunday best, faces full of concerned sympathy. From the gallery's far side, Nolan's mother held a Kleenex to her reddened eyes. I walked past the jury box, 12 solemn faces already seated, black robes of their collective impartiality hanging invisible in the air. I could hear the soft creak of leather as the bailiff called the room to order. I felt my pulse in my throat. At 8:15 a.m. the judge entered, robes whispering like dry leaves. He was the same judge from my arraignment, Judge Pennington, wire-rimmed glasses, and an expression of patient solemnity. He rapped his gavel once. "Good morning. We will now proceed with the sentencing hearing for case 2025 C R402 State of Ohio versus Jeremy Nolan, and the related hearing for accomplice obstruction, State versus Sarah Bradley. His voice was measured, resonant. I sat at the plaintiff's table with Deputy Vega beside me, her presence a silent reassurance. Across the aisle, the prosecutor, Assistant State's Attorney De La Cruz, arranged her exhibits. Nolan sat at the defense table, flanked by his attorney, Ms. Sinclair, her dark hair pulled into a severe bun. He looked gaunt but composed, his posture straighter than I'd ever seen it. The prosecutor rose. Your Honor, on April 30th and May 4th, Mr. Nolan committed acts of attempted burglary, stalking, and terroristic threats. Our evidence is incontrovertible. Fingerprint matches, DNA on the crowbar, shovel prints in the soil, and the notation "she knows too much" in his own handwriting. The court admitted these exhibits without objection. Mr. Nolan's prior convictions for stalking and burglary demonstrate a pattern of premeditated behavior. We recommend the maximum term under Ohio Revised Code Section 2923.02, 5 years to life in prison, with mandatory 5 years at minimum. She gestured to the defense table. Ms. Sinclair stood. Your Honor, Mr. Nolan's plea agreement included acknowledgement of his offenses, but we request leniency given his documented mental health issues, obsessive-compulsive disorder, acute depressive episodes, and unresolved childhood trauma. He has no violent criminal history. Furthermore, Ms. Bradley's cooperation and expression of forgiveness, which we will show in her statement, warrant consideration under the mitigating factors of the sentencing guidelines. Nolan's gaze flicked to me. For a moment I saw something in his eyes. Remorse? Gratitude? A flicker too quick to name. Judge Pennington adjusted his glasses. I will hear victim impact statements before sentencing. He nodded toward me. Ms. Bradley, you may speak. My legs trembled as I rose. The aisle carpet was soft under my shoes. I inhaled, tasting the copper kettle coffee I'd forced down this morning, bitter with cream and 3 sugars. But the flavor didn't stick. I reached the lectern and set my recorder on the stand, the red light glowing steadily. I cleared my throat. Your Honor, jurors, my name is Sarah Bradley. My voice quavered at first, but I steadied it. On April 30th, 2025, I awoke to the sound of tapping on my window at precisely 3:07 a.m. because I checked my phone immediately afterward. The intruder, Mr. Nolan, forced his way into my home at 3:24 a.m., brandishing a crowbar. He collected my private journals, my thoughts, my teenage fears, and used them like ammunition against me. I paused to clear tears, tasting salt. He didn't just break a door, he broke my sense of safety. I spent nights trembling on Mrs. Collier's couch, the smell of her citrus air spray forever tied to the memory of his shadow against her camera's infrared glow. I looked to the Colliers, who nodded gently. I lost days of work, waking every hour, haunted by silence. The jury leaned forward. I testify today not only as a witness, but as someone who concealed evidence for years. My own guilt at the death of a childhood friend, Jason Tucker. I hid hair beneath an oak tree, kept a silver locket with his photograph. When Mr. Nolan's obsession forced that relic back into the light, it became evidence of my wrongdoing. Because of him, I confessed everything on May 4th at 11:32 p.m. I paid my debt to the legal system for concealment. My fingers brushed the metal I wore under my blouse, the locket's chain repurposed as a necklace. Your Honor, I ask that you hold Mr. Nolan accountable for his crimes, his terroristic threats, his stalking, his calculated violation of my home. But I also ask for mercy for both of us, so that I can continue to heal without fear. and so that Mr. Nolan can receive the mental health treatment he so clearly needs. I set the recorder down and returned to my seat. The courtroom was silent, but for the soft sniffle of Nolan's mother. Judge Pennington consulted his notes. Then he turned to the defense. Ms. Sinclair requested a brief recess to call a clinical psychologist listed in Nolan's mitigation report. The judge granted a 10-minute recess. During the break, I closed my eyes and leaned back in my chair. The mid-morning sunlight slanted through high windows, dust motes drifting like tiny phantoms. I could hear Deputy Vega's whisper to the bailiff, "Keep an eye on her." I closed my hand around my rosary bracelet, counting a silent prayer. At 9:10 a.m., the court reconvened. A clinical report was read aloud. In Nolan's childhood neglect, a traumatic near-drowning at age 9, undiagnosed PTSD, it painted a portrait of a man shaped by fear. The psychologist recommended inpatient treatment and cognitive behavioral therapy, but acknowledged the severity of Nolan's actions necessitated confinement. Judge Pennington then addressed sentencing. "Mr. Nolan, the court has reviewed the pre-sentence investigation report, the victim impact statement, and the psychological evaluations. While your mental health issues mitigate somewhat your culpability, they do not excuse your premeditated actions. The court sentences you to 9 years in the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction, 5 years minimum, 4 years additional at the court's discretion, followed by lifetime post-release supervision with no contact orders. You will undergo mandatory mental health treatment through the prisons program." He then turned to me. "Ms. Bradley, for your concealment of evidence, the court acknowledges your full cooperation, your volunteer work with grief support groups since your confession, and the unique circumstances of your trauma. The court sentences you to a suspended term of 2 years community control, including 200 hours of community service at a victim's advocacy center, restitution to Mrs. Collier for her security upgrades, and mandatory counseling. You may return home immediately under the terms of your protective order against Mr. Nolan." A collective exhale swept the courtroom. Molly's hand closed over mine. I felt the warmth of her support. As the gavel came down, I gathered my recorder, the fragile thread of memory and proof. Outside the courtroom, reporters waited, microphones extended. I declined comment. Today, I was more interested in silence. Back at the bungalow that afternoon, I sat on the porch swing, the chains creaking in the breeze. My jacket had been returned, still damp from the May 4th storm, and I wrapped it around my shoulders. I lit the cherry-scented candle from Mrs. Collier, watching the flame flicker against the gathering dusk. The evidence bags, items 1A through 7B, were locked away in the sheriff's evidence vault. Only I and a few officers knew their contents now. On the railing lay one final envelope, sealed in frosted plastic, bearing no return address. Inside was a single audio file on a thumb drive labeled, "For Sarah. Play when ready." My recorder beeped to life when I pressed play. A faint hiss, then a whisper. My own voice, but younger. The morning of June 14th, 2012, at Miller's Pond. "Jason, hold on, I'm coming. Jason? Jason." Then a man's voice, deep and trembling. "Sarah, you left him. You left him." The line crackled and ended. One breath, and then silence. My heart thundered. I looked at the drive in my hand, the weight of unanswered questions heavy in my lap. Who recorded this? Nolan, his mother, someone else? And why deliver it now, after every courtroom drama, every confession? I placed the drive beside the locket necklace on the table. The candle's scent curled around it, sweet and ominous. A soft breeze stirred outside. The porch swing rattled lightly, as though beckoning. I closed my eyes and inhaled the cherry and candle wax aroma, the scent of rain still lingering in the air. My fingers hovered over the play button again, my mind racing. I had faced the legal system, bared my secrets, and endured judgment, but some truths lay deeper than any court record. The drive's presence was a question. Would I dare to listen? And if I did, would I find redemption, or another horror waiting beneath the surface? I opened my eyes to the darkening sky. The first star blinked above. I pressed play. What did I risk uncovering this time? I pressed play again, letting the recorder's hiss fill my ears. In the quiet of the bungalow's living room, the soft crackle of tape sounded like distant static before a voice emerged. June 14th, 2012, 1547. A child's voice, breathless. Not mine, but Jason's. Sarah, I can't breathe. I froze, the hair on my arms rising. The cherry candle's flame flickered, shadows dancing across the walls. I leaned forward, gripping the recorder as if it might slip away. Sarah, help me, Sarah. His tone was panicked, high-pitched, hiss and static. Then another voice, deeper, trembling with urgency. Sarah, you left him. Silence. Then the unmistakable sound of splashing water, gurgling. A child's cry cut off. And finally my own voice. 10-year-old me, softer, smaller. I'm sorry, Jason. I couldn't. The tape ended abruptly with a low click. The room felt hollow. I exhaled, the breath catching in my chest. I stared at the drive lying next to the locket necklace, my pulse roaring in my ears. I set the recorder down and rose. The distant rumble of traffic on Route 47 drifted through the open window. The dusk had deepened into night. Cicadas sparking their chorus outside. The cherry-scented wax melted at the wick's edge. The sweet smell now tinged with something acrid, guilt, or regret. I found my jacket and phone and stepped out onto the porch. The air was heavy and warm, carrying the scent of damp earth and honeysuckle. I climbed into my car, the leather seat cool beneath me, and texted Detective Harland. Me. I played the file. It's Jason's voice. I need to talk. Evidence board tomorrow morning? Seconds later, Harland. Understood. Be at station at 900. Secure everything else tonight. My hands shook as I drove through the empty streets of Willow Creek toward the sheriff's station. Streetlights pooled in halos on the wet asphalt. The station's neon sign blinked red and blue. I parked under the overhang and hurried inside, the automatic doors whispering shut behind me. The front desk was dark. Harlan's office light glowed. I knocked once, then twice. Come in, he called. Inside, he sat behind his desk, flanked by evidence lockers. The locket and Polaroid lay under a clear plexiglass lid, alongside Nolan's notebook and the audio drive. A forensic tech hovered by the computer, converting audio to digital waveform, annotating timestamps. Harland rose, concern in his eyes. You okay? I swallowed. I need to log this. The recording proves everything I repressed. I placed the drive next to the others. But we have a bigger issue. This tape is evidence of a child's drowning, and me confessing. That could implicate me in his death or cover up beyond concealment. He grimaced. We'll need to present it to the prosecutor, but first, let's authenticate the voices. He motioned to the tech. Can you run a forensic voice analysis? Compare that to old interviews with me, and any files from 12. The tech nodded, already typing. Might take a few hours, but I'll rush it. Harland shut his eyes briefly. All right. In the meantime, you need to stay somewhere else tonight. I'll have Vega escort you to your sister's apartment. I nodded. I'll pack, and Harland, thank you. He gave me a firm nod. We'll handle this carefully. You did the right thing. Back in my car, I drove slowly to Molly's place in Columbus. The drive was quiet, Radio off, thoughts racing. I replayed the tape in my head. Jason's final pleas, my own apology. For years I'd believed the drowning accidental, a tragic accident on a field trip. But the tape suggested I was closer, heard him cry, spoken to him, and fled. The full weight of that moment crushed me. At Molly's apartment, I dropped off my bag and sank onto her couch. She poured me tea and sat beside me without speaking. I held the mug, tasting chamomile and honey, but couldn't swallow. I told her everything: the tape, the locket, the burial, the arrest. Tears streamed freely. She held me as I sobbed for Jason, for myself, for Nolan's tortured mind, for all of us scarred by that small pond's edge. The next morning, I arrived at the station at 8:45. A memo was pinned on Harlan's door. Vox analysis report, ready. I steeled myself and knocked. He ushered me in. The tech stood by a laptop. "Here's the spectrographic overlay," he said, pulling up 2 waveforms. Jason's voices matched to a known sample from that day's 911 call transcript from the field trip leader, and my young voice matched to audio of a practice podcast I recorded in college. Intersections of pitch and cadence confirmed authenticity at 99.7%. The tech printed the charts, stamping them Forensic Exhibit A. Harlan handed me the prints. "This tape is real. We can use it, but chain of custody must be airtight. We'll update the evidence log. Items 8A, audio file, 8B, forensic analysis report. I'll contact the county prosecutor immediately." I exhaled. "What about me?" My voice trembled. "This implicates me beyond concealment. I confessed to hiding hair, but this is me admitting presence at the drowning. They could charge me with involuntary manslaughter or child endangerment." He leaned forward. "We'll advise you to get an attorney before presenting your statement to the prosecutor. I'll not be present. You deserve counsel." His empathy struck me like a lifeline. "Thank you for everything." He nodded. "Be careful. And Sarah, this is your chance for true absolution. Tell the full truth." I stood, heart hammering. He escorted me to the door. "Vega will drive you back. I'll make sure your files are updated." In the cruiser, Vega gloved my hands to protect the drive and handed me a certificate of evidence receipt. "Aim to see an attorney today," she said softly. "I'll check on you tomorrow." That evening, I sat in a small conference room at a legal clinic. My attorney, Ms. Rivera, reviewed the evidence. Not only my concealment charge, but potential manslaughter exposure. She was measured, professional. "Your cooperation is your strongest defense," she said. "We'll present hedonic and psychological evaluations. This was a child's panic, not malice. The tape is damning, but context matters. And the prosecutor has discretion." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I just want to make amends. For Jason, for Nolan, for myself." She offered a small smile. "Then we'll build that case together." In the days that followed, I submitted a full sworn statement, documented every detail of that day at Miller's Pond. My fear, my flight, my guilt. The prosecutor agreed to file a single count of obstruction, given my immediate confession and therapeutic treatment, rather than pursue manslaughter. I entered a diversion program, performing volunteer work at the county's Child Safety Initiative, reminding others to recognize and react in emergencies. Nolan's case moved swiftly. With items 1A to 8B in the record, and victim statements, including mine, his 9-year sentence was upheld on appeal. He was transferred to a treatment facility within the prison system, pending compliance. 8 months later, I was invited to share my story at the county's inaugural Speak Up for Safety conference. In a packed auditorium, I sat behind a microphone. The scent of pine from the podium's floral arrangement drifted up. My hands were steady as I addressed parents, teachers, first responders. If you hear a cry for help, act, no hesitation. A moment's courage can save a life, and a buried secret can break you in ways you never imagine. I closed with the promise, I will speak the truth for Jason, and for every child whose voice goes unheard. After the speech, I stepped outside to the parking lot. The autumn air was crisp, maple leaves crackling underfoot. I reached into my coat pocket and touched the locket necklace. I'd repurposed it as a memorial to Jason, silver heart inverted, the tiny photo replaced with a clear resin disc. I placed it gently atop the conference's community memorial table, where visitors left candles and notes. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You did well, but the tape you didn't hear still exists. Look beneath the surface. My heart stuttered. I stared at the message, the words flickering on the screen. I remembered the locket's residue, not just hair, but something darker, Jason's blood. The tape only captured my apology. Maybe another track recorded Nolan's whisper, "Find me where the lilies grow." I glanced at the row of memorial lilies by the table, petals brushed gold by dusk. My breath caught. The question came again, echoing in my mind, louder than any court gavel. What truth still lay buried beneath the surface? I parked under the pale wash of a single street lamp 10 blocks from my apartment in Columbus. The night air smelled of wet pavement and fallen leaves, musty, autumnal. My boots sank into a thin carpet of yellowing maples, each step crackling. I tucked the phone back into my coat pocket, the unknown text's words still burning. Find me where the lilies grow. I crossed the street to the community garden behind the old church, where, 2 weeks earlier, I had laid the locket beside the white lilies in memory of Jason. Under the cloudless sky, the faint glow of a half moon traced long shadows across flower beds. The lilies stood tall, 6-foot stalks crowned with delicate petals, ghostly in moonlight. I crouched at the edge of the plot and ran my fingertips along the damp soil. The earth here felt loose, recently turned. I remembered burying the silver box there. The day Nolan first broke in, I'd thought to move the locket from the bungalow to somewhere sacred. But I never returned. Now, I wondered if Nolan had, and whether the lilies marked more than memory. A soft breeze carried the scent of lilies and rotting mulch. My breath hitched. I closed my eyes and pictured Nolan's final whisper, or maybe it wasn't Nolan's. Find me where the lilies grow. Was he taunting me, or was someone else? I pressed my knuckles to the soil and dug. Mud squelched under my nails. The chill of dirt crept up my sleeves. At the 3rd inch, I struck metal. My hand trembling, I unearthed a small tin box, painted white, the edges rusted. Fingertips numb, I pried it open. Inside lay 2 items. A folded index card marked 8C in black Sharpie, matching the evidence tags, and a 3rd audio drive. Slimmer than the others, matte black, no label. The index card read, in precise block letters, "Play this alone after you breathe, or it will break you." My heart thundered. I closed my eyes, inhaled deeply, tasted earth and something acrid beneath it, then pulled out my phone and pressed play on the unmarked drive. The garden was silent except for the hoot of a distant owl. At first, I heard nothing but hiss, then a voice, low, intimate, not Nolan's, but "Sarah." It was my own grown voice, breathless. I gasped. The voice continued, echoing as if from a memory. "If you're hearing this, it means I didn't make it home. Or I was taken before I could give context. You've followed every breadcrumb, the locket, the Polaroid, the pawn tape, the confessions. But you never asked why I moved that box here. You never asked why I left my journal pages in the shed unsaid. I had to hide more than guilt. My chest tightened. Gooseflesh prickled my arms. The voice shifted. Another speaker, raspy, trembling with urgency. You were never alone, Sarah. We were two girls that day, you and her. Don't you remember? I froze. Another girl? My mind spun back a decade to the sunny afternoon by Miller's Pond. There had been Jason treading water, Nolan panicked, me frozen. Yes, but the memory had blurred. I'd always thought it was just the three of us. Now I realized something else had happened. My breath caught as the audio crackled on. Her name was Lily. She was 12, new in town, followed you everywhere. You two built castles of twigs in the reeds, and that day she dove to retrieve Jason's metal bracelet you dropped. She surfaced, empty hands, pale lips, and sank. My stomach lurched. Lily. I had a childhood friend named Lily in first grade, tiny redhead with freckles, who moved away in second grade. I hadn't thought of her in years, but suddenly her face swam before me. The rush of her laughter at recess, the way she clutched my hand so tightly. The voice, my voice, resumed. I buried Lily in the hollow beneath the oak, after I buried Jason's locket beneath the lilies here. I thought 2 burials meant 2 sins balanced. Nolan found the locket, but Lily stayed hidden. Until now. The crackle paused. Then another voice, soft, urgent, almost a whisper of wind. You killed her, Sarah. Not intentionally, but you left her to drown, and you buried her alone. You made 2 promises that day, one to Jason and one to Lily. You broke both. Lily waits in the dark. Find her. The recording ended with a low click and a faint, childlike giggle, right behind me. My blood froze. I spun around, heart hammering so loud I feared she'd hear it. The garden lay empty, only lilies swaying in the moonlight. I stumbled backward, the audio drive dropping onto the soil. I scrambled to retrieve it, mud coating my fingers. My breath came in shallow bursts, earth, lilies, pond water, blood. I looked down at the lilies. They bent in a breeze I didn't feel. Under one stalk, I saw a pale shape. My stomach pitched. My legs refused to obey. The shape resolved into a small earthen mound, untouched, not part of the gardener's routine. The box had marked it, not me. I knelt and brushed the topsoil away. Beneath lay a single, fragile skull cap. Small, child-sized, mottled with leaf debris. My hand hovered over the bone, trembling. This couldn't be. My heart lurched as I realized it was Lily's, the girl I never thought about, whose disappearance had gone unsolved in 2012, chalked up to ran off by her mother, her name fading from local news. I pressed a gloved finger to the cap, a whisper of crimson dust on my glove. I pressed further and unearthed the rest. Tiny femur, a fragment of tibia. The bones gleamed white in moonlight, each angled shard like the ribs of a buried secret. The air grew colder. The lilies wilted in my vision, petals curling inward. I cradled that fragile skullcap in my palm, tears blurring the petals around me. I had never given Lily a funeral or a telltale marker. Nolan never cared about her. His obsession was with me and Jason. Lily had been collateral, buried twice, so no one would see the full truth. The hush of the garden felt oppressive, as though the earth itself demanded justice. I closed my eyes, pressing my free hand against my heart. Then I heard a soft voice behind me, childlike, clear as a bell. You found me. I whirled, but saw nothing in the shadows beyond the moonlit lilies. The voice echoed again from all around. Will you remember me now, Sarah? My chest seized. I realized then Lily had been waiting for this moment, the reckoning of her name. The whip crack of thunder overhead felt like applause for a confession I hadn't yet given. I turned back to the mound, bowed my head over the remains. The lilies brushed my cheek with every small breeze. I closed my eyes and whispered, "I'm sorry, Lily. I'm so sorry." A final wind gust ruffled the petals, carrying the faintest sigh of relief, or maybe a whisper of warning. I rose with trembling legs, cradling the audio drive and the fragile bones in separate evidence bags I'd brought, one for each. The moon had slipped behind a cloud, and in the gathering darkness I sealed the bags, tagging them Item 9A and 9B. As I straightened, I felt the hysteria and grief coiled in my gut. The lilies rustled one last time, as if waving goodbye. I walked out of the garden under the thin glow of street lamps, the evidence bags heavy in my hands. My mind swirled with memories I'd never intended to uncover, secrets buried beneath earth and water, friendships ended by fear, children left to die. At my apartment door, I paused. The audio drive and bones lay like judgment in my palms. I leaned against the doorframe, the cold wood pressing into my back. I closed my eyes and tasted lilies on the night air, sweet, floral, unsettling. Above me, the first star shone quietly. I pressed my forehead to the door, voice barely a whisper. "Lily, will you finally rest?"